Welcome, fellow dreamer. You have found a place of calm and rest. This evening, we're going to explore the remarkable journey of electricity, from ancient observations of amber's strange attraction to the brilliant networks that illuminate our modern world. We'll trace the patient discoveries of curious minds who unlocked nature's most enigmatic force, transforming it from celestial wonder into the gentle current that powers our lives. Accompanied by soothing music and abstract imagery, we'll be uncovering little-known wonders and fascinating stories that gently feed your curiosity as you drift towards sleep. If you enjoy these calm adventures with us, don't be shy. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment to help other smart sleepers dream too. And now, take a deep breath, let your body sink into comfort, and allow your mind to rest and your eyes to close as the tale unfolds before you. Long before anyone understood what electricity truly was, people encountered its strange and puzzling effects. On cool, dry days in ancient times, when someone rubbed a piece of amber against wool or fur, something mysterious happened. The golden, fossilized tree resin began to attract lightweight objects toward itself, pulling at feathers, bits of straw, and particles of dust as if by invisible threads. This peculiar phenomenon had no obvious explanation, yet it was real enough that anyone could witness it with their own hands. The ancient Greeks noticed this property of amber and found it both fascinating and perplexing. In their language, they called amber electron, a word that would echo through centuries and eventually give us our modern term electricity. Yet for these early observers, the attraction of amber remained purely a curiosity, a parlor trick of nature with no apparent connection to anything grander. They had no framework to understand what they were witnessing, no concept of charge or electrons or the fundamental forces that govern matter itself. In the writings that have survived from classical antiquity, we find scattered references to these strange attractions. The philosopher Thales of Miletus, who lived around 600 years before the Common Era, reportedly investigated amber's peculiar properties and pondered what might cause such behavior. But his thoughts on the matter, if they were ever recorded in detail, have been lost to time. What remains are merely fragments, hints that curious minds were already trying to make sense of this invisible force. The Romans inherited this knowledge from the Greeks and conducted their own observations. They too rubbed amber and noticed its power to attract, but like their predecessors, they could offer no satisfactory explanation for why it happened. To them, it was simply one of nature's many peculiarities, perhaps no more remarkable than the way a lodestone could attract iron, though of course that was a different phenomenon entirely, as later scientists would eventually discover. Far to the east, in ancient China, scholars also encountered what we now recognize as static electricity, though their cultural context shaped how they interpreted these observations. Chinese philosophers, with their emphasis on harmony and balance in nature, saw these phenomena as part of the greater patterns that governed all things. References to materials that could attract light objects after rubbing appear in texts from various dynasties, woven into broader discussions of natural philosophy and the fundamental principles of the universe. Yet perhaps the most dramatic and awe-inspiring electrical phenomenon that ancient peoples witnessed was one they could never hope to reproduce in their homes or workshops. Lightning split the skies during storms, brilliant and terrifying, accompanied by the earth-shaking sound of thunder. This was electricity on a scale that dwarfed any small spark or gentle attraction between amber and feather. Here was raw power that could shatter trees, ignite fires, and strike down living creatures in an instant. Ancient civilizations around the world developed elaborate mythologies to explain lightning and thunder. They were, it seemed, the weapons and voices of the gods themselves. The connection between the gentle static attraction of rubbed amber and the violent discharge of lightning remained completely hidden from these early observers. How could anyone suspect that the same fundamental force responsible for making amber attract dust was also responsible for the tremendous bolts that illuminated storm clouds? The scales were so different, the context so separate, that no obvious connection presented itself. The ancient observers did notice certain patterns in static phenomena. dry conditions seemed to favor stronger effects. Certain materials worked better than others for producing the attraction. Amber was particularly effective, but other substances could also exhibit similar properties when rubbed vigorously. This suggested that whatever caused the phenomenon was not unique to amber alone, though amber's name would forever be attached to it. Some ancient thinkers wondered whether these mysterious attractions were related to the material's soul or spirit. Perhaps, they theorized, all things possess some degree of life or animation, and rubbing awakened this hidden vitality, allowing it to reach out and draw other objects near. This might seem fanciful to us now, but in the absence of any understanding of electrical charge or atomic structure, such explanations were as reasonable as any other. The ancient Chinese concept of qi, the vital energy that flows through all things, provided another framework for thinking about these mysterious forces. When amber attracted objects after rubbing, perhaps it was a matter of qi being concentrated or activated through the friction. This perspective would influence Eastern natural philosophy for centuries, offering a way to discuss and categorize phenomena even if the underlying mechanisms remained obscure. As centuries passed, knowledge of these static phenomena persisted, passed down through texts and demonstrations. Medieval scholars in Europe, inheriting the classical learning of Greece and Rome, remained aware of amber's curious properties. They catalogued it among the wonders of nature, but made little progress in explaining it. The medieval worldview, with its emphasis on divine order and scholastic reasoning, was not yet equipped with the experimental methods that would eventually unlock electricity's secrets. All the while, lightning continued to flash across skies everywhere, and people continued to regard it with a mixture of fear and reverence. Tall structures, particularly those with metal components, seemed more likely to be struck. Bell towers and church spires attracted lightning strikes with puzzling regularity, sometimes with devastating results. But the reasons remained mysterious, and the connection to that gentle attraction between amber and feather went completely unrecognized. The stage was thus set for a transformation in human understanding. For thousands of years, people had observed electrical phenomena without grasping their true nature or their profound interconnections. They had the observations but lacked the concepts, the tools, and the experimental methods to progress further. The rubbed amber, the mysterious lightning, the strange tingles and sparks that occasionally surprised people in dry conditions, all these were pieces of a puzzle that no one yet knew how to assemble. But the pieces existed, noted and preserved in the written records of many civilizations, waiting for the era when systematic investigation would begin to reveal what electricity truly was and how it would eventually transform every aspect of human existence. The ancients looked up at the sky with wonder and fear, for above them raged forces they could not comprehend. Thunder rolled across the heavens like the voice of something vast and unknowable. Lightning split the darkness with blinding white fire that could shatter trees, ignite buildings, and strike down living creatures in an instant. To people living thousands of years ago, these atmospheric displays demanded explanation, and in the absence of scientific understanding, they turned to the divine. In the pantheon of ancient Greece, Zeus ruled from Mount Olympus with his signature weapon clutched in his mighty hand, the thunderbolt. When the king of gods grew angry, he would hurl these bolts of lightning toward the earth, expressing his displeasure or enforcing his will. The Romans adopted this same imagery for their Jupiter, who commanded the sky with equal authority. The crack of thunder was his voice. The flash of lightning was his judgment made visible. Throughout the Mediterranean world, people built temples and offered sacrifices to appease these storm gods, hoping to be spared from the destructive power that descended from the clouds. Far to the north, Norse mythology told of Thor, the red-bearded god of thunder who rode across the sky in a chariot pulled by goats. His hammer, Mjolnir, created thunder when it struck, and sparks from its blows became lightning. In the Hindu traditions of India, Indra wielded the Vajra, a thunderbolt weapon that defeated demons and brought rain to nourish the land. The ancient Mayans worshipped Chark, a rain deity associated with lightning and thunder. From Japan to West Africa, from the Americas to the Pacific Islands, nearly every culture developed mythological explanations for these electrical phenomena that lit up their skies. Yet even as these mythological frameworks took root in popular imagination, some thinkers began to question whether natural forces might follow patterns that human reason could discern. In the 6th century before the Common Era, in the Greek city of Miletus on the coast of Asia Minor, a philosopher named Thales proposed something revolutionary. Rather than attributing all natural phenomena to the whims of gods, Thales suggested that the world operated according to natural principles that could be understood through observation and thought. He believed that water was the fundamental substance from which all things arose, and he investigated the properties of matter with curiosity rather than simply accepting traditional explanations. Thales had observed that amber, when rubbed with fur, could attract lightweight objects like feathers or bits of straw. This mysterious attractive force seemed related somehow to the greater forces at work in nature, though the connection remained unclear. His approach of seeking natural explanations rather than supernatural ones planted seeds that would eventually grow into the scientific method, though that growth would take many centuries. Following in this tradition of natural philosophy, Aristotle in the 4th century before the Common Era attempted to explain thunder and lightning through his understanding of the elements. He proposed that thunder resulted from the collision of clouds or from wind trapped inside clouds and forcefully escaping. Lightning, he suggested, was a dry, fiery exhalation from the earth that ignited in the upper atmosphere. While these explanations were ultimately incorrect, they represented attempts to understand atmospheric electricity through natural processes rather than divine intervention. The Roman philosopher Lucretius, writing in the 1st century before the Common Era, offered his own naturalistic theories in his great poem on the nature of things. He suggested that lightning resulted from the collision of clouds, which squeezed out seeds of fire in much the way striking stones together produces sparks. He described thunder as the sound of clouds tearing apart or colliding with one another. Though his atomic theory of matter contained remarkable insights, his understanding of atmospheric phenomena remained speculative, constrained by the limits of observation available in his time. During the long medieval period in Europe, the study of natural phenomena became intertwined with religious scholarship. Thunder and lightning were sometimes interpreted as manifestations of divine power or warnings of God's displeasure. However, some medieval scholars continued the tradition of seeking natural explanations. They studied the classical texts that had been preserved through Arabic translations and Byzantine libraries, slowly building upon the fragmentary knowledge of the ancient world. The medieval period also saw practical responses to lightning's destructive power. Churches, being among the tallest structures in medieval towns, frequently attracted lightning strikes. Bell ringing during thunderstorms became a common practice, based on the belief that sanctified bells would ward off lightning and evil spirits thought to ride the storm winds. Tragically, this practice actually increased danger, as bell ringers in tall towers became frequent victims of lightning strikes. The persistence of this dangerous tradition despite its clear hazards demonstrates how difficult it was to overcome established beliefs with empirical observation. In China, natural philosophers developed their own theories about thunder and lightning within the framework of their understanding of natural forces. The concept of qi, or vital energy flowing through all things, provided a lens through which atmospheric phenomena could be interpreted. Chinese observers noted patterns in storm behavior and developed increasingly sophisticated weather prediction methods, though a complete understanding of electrical phenomena remained beyond reach. The Arabic scholars of the medieval Islamic Golden Age preserved and expanded upon Greek and Roman natural philosophy. They translated ancient texts, added their own observations, and developed sophisticated instruments for studying the natural world. Their work in optics, mathematics, and natural philosophy created foundations that would eventually support the scientific revolution in Europe. As the medieval period drew to a close and the Renaissance began to flower in Europe, a gradual shift in thinking took hold. The rediscovery of classical texts, the development of new instruments for observation and measurement, and a growing confidence in human ability to understand nature through systematic investigation all contributed to changing attitudes. The stage was being set for a new approach to studying the mysterious force that manifested in rubbed amber and in lightning bolts alike. Natural philosophers began to suspect that these phenomena, whether small sparks from amber or massive bolts from the sky, might be related expressions of the same underlying force. The path from mythological explanation to scientific understanding was long and winding, spanning thousands of years and countless cultures. But with each generation, observers accumulated more details, asked more precise questions, and moved incrementally closer to grasping the true nature of electricity. The journey from Zeus's thunderbolt to the systematic study of electrical science was about to accelerate dramatically. As the medieval worldview began to crack and crumble under the weight of careful observation, a new spirit swept through Europe. The 16th and 17th centuries brought with them an appetite for systematic inquiry that would forever change humanity's relationship with the natural world. Among the many mysteries that beckoned to curious minds, electricity remained one of the most elusive, still largely confined to parlor tricks with amber and unexplained observations of lightning's terrible power. Into this atmosphere of awakening curiosity stepped William Gilbert, physician to Queen Elizabeth I of England. Born in 1544 in Colchester, Gilbert enjoyed a comfortable life as a respected doctor, but his true passion lay in understanding the hidden forces of nature. For nearly 2 decades, he conducted experiments in his London home, methodically testing materials, recording results, and building upon observations that stretched back to the ancient Greeks. In the year 1600, Gilbert published his masterwork, a treatise written in Latin and titled Electromagnetic, Magneticis Corporibus, et de Magno Magnete Tello, which translates to On the Magnet and Magnetic Bodies, and on that great magnet the Earth. This work represented something genuinely revolutionary. Rather than merely compiling the wisdom of ancient authorities, Gilbert described his own experiments, invited readers to verify his results, and drew conclusions based on evidence rather than philosophical speculation. Gilbert's most significant contribution to the study of electricity lay in his careful distinction between magnetic and electric phenomena. Before his work, many natural philosophers lumped these forces together as mysterious attractions between objects. Gilbert demonstrated through patient experimentation that they were fundamentally different. He showed that magnets could attract only certain materials, particularly iron, while electrically charged objects could attract many different substances, from bits of paper to tiny fragments of metal. To aid in his investigations, Gilbert invented a device he called the Versorium, a delicate needle balanced on a pivot point, free to rotate toward any attracting force. With this simple instrument, he could detect even faint electrical effects, making his experiments more precise than anything attempted before. He tested numerous materials, rubbing them to generate static charge, and discovered that many substances beyond amber could be electrified. Jet, a form of fossilized wood, proved electrical when rubbed. So did diamond, sapphire, glass, and sulfur. Gilbert compiled lists of these substances, expanding the known world of electrical phenomena far beyond the ancients' limited observations. It was Gilbert who gave us the word we use today. Drawing from the Greek electron, their word for amber, he coined the Latin term electricus to describe materials that could attract light objects after being rubbed. From this root would grow the entire vocabulary of electrical science, electric, electricity, electrification, and countless other terms that now populate our language. Gilbert's work did more than catalog facts. It established a methodology, a way of approaching nature through controlled experiment and careful observation. His book became tremendously influential, read by natural philosophers across Europe and beyond. Galileo himself praised Gilbert's experimental approach, and the work inspired generations of investigators to take up the study of electricity with renewed seriousness. As the 17th century progressed, others built upon Gilbert's foundation. In the German city of Magdeburg, Otto von Guericke, mayor and natural philosopher, became fascinated with the properties of vacuum and pressure. Born in 1602, von Guericke is perhaps best remembered for his dramatic demonstration with the Magdeburg hemispheres, two copper bowls that, when sealed together and emptied of air, could not be pulled apart even by teams of horses. But von Guericke's curiosity extended to electrical phenomena as well. Around 1660, he created what would become recognized as the first electrical generator. His device consisted of a sphere of sulfur, roughly the size of a child's head, mounted on an axle so it could be rotated. When von Guericke turned the sphere while holding his dry hand against it, the friction generated significant static charge, far more than could be produced by simply rubbing a piece of amber. With this machine, von Guericke discovered several remarkable properties of electricity. He found that the charged sulfur sphere could attract lightweight objects like feathers and bits of paper from a considerable distance. More intriguingly, he observed that sometimes objects drawn to the sphere would suddenly spring away after touching it, as if repelled by the very force that had attracted them moments before. This was among the first recorded observations of electrical repulsion, a phenomenon that would prove crucial to later understanding. Von Guericke also noticed a faint glow and crackling sounds when the sphere was charged in darkness, perhaps the first deliberate observation of what we now understand as electrical discharge through air. He conducted experiments with linen threads, showing that lightweight fibers could be suspended in air by electrical forces, apparently defying gravity as they hung beneath the charged sphere. These early machines and methods remained crude by later standards, yet they represented genuine progress. Natural philosophers now possess tools that could generate electrical effects reliably and repeatably. No longer was electricity merely a curiosity occasionally observed when circumstances happened to align. It could be summoned forth deliberately, studied systematically, and subjected to experimental investigation. The experimental approach championed by Gilbert and extended by von Guericke established electricity as a legitimate subject for scientific inquiry. The foundations had been laid, the basic distinctions drawn, and the first instruments constructed. As the 17th century drew toward its close, electricity stood poised at the threshold of deeper investigation. The mysterious force that had puzzled humanity since ancient times was slowly yielding its secrets to patient observation and clever experimentation. In the laboratories and studies of Europe's natural philosophers, electrical machines hummed and sparked, charged spheres attracted and repelled, and careful records accumulated. The age of systematic electrical science had truly begun, and with each experiment, each observation, each carefully recorded result, the pathway forward grew clearer, leading toward discoveries that would eventually illuminate the world. The scientists of the early 18th century had learned to generate electricity through friction machines and glass globes, but they faced a persistent frustration. The mysterious force they created seemed to vanish almost as quickly as it appeared. They could produce sparks, cause feathers to dance in the air, and make their hair stand on end, but they could not hold on to this elusive power. They could not store it, study it at leisure, or conduct careful experiments over time. Electricity was like a wild creature that appeared for a moment and then fled back into the invisible realm from which it came. This limitation would change dramatically in the winter months of 1745 and 1746, when two men working independently and unknown to each other would stumble upon a discovery that would transform electrical science forever. Neither man was seeking fame or recognition when they made their breakthrough. Both were simply curious experimenters following the trails of inquiry that the natural philosophers before them had blazed. In the German town of Pomerania, a clergyman and amateur scientist named Ewald Georg von Kleist was conducting experiments with static electricity. Von Kleist had access to one of the friction machines that generated electrical charge, and like many experimenters of his time, he was fascinated by the question of whether electricity could somehow be captured and preserved. In his modest laboratory, he held a small glass medicine bottle partly filled with water in one hand while attempting to charge it with electricity. A nail or wire extended through the cork stopper into the water within, and this metal conductor touched the source of electrical charge from his friction machine. What happened next took von Kleist completely by surprise. After charging his simple apparatus, he touched the protruding nail with his other hand, and a violent shock coursed through his body with such intensity that he later described feeling it in his arms and throughout his entire frame. The sensation was unlike the mild static sparks he had experienced before. This was electricity with a force that commanded respect, even a measure of fear. He had inadvertently created the first electrical capacitor, though he did not fully understand what he had accomplished. Von Kleist's attempts to communicate his discovery to other natural philosophers met with limited success. His descriptions were imprecise, and other experimenters struggled to replicate his results. The significance of his achievement might have been lost to history had not a similar discovery occurred independently across the continent in the Dutch city of Leyden. There, at the university that had become one of Europe's centers of learning, a professor of physics named Peter van Musschenbroek was conducting his own electrical experiments. Working with his student Andreas Cuneus, Musschenbroek used a glass jar partially filled with water, with a brass wire extending through the cork into the liquid. The arrangement was remarkably similar to von Kleist's apparatus, though developed without any knowledge of the German clergyman's work. When they attempted to charge this device with electricity from their friction machine, they too experienced the powerful shock that von Kleist had discovered. Musschenbroek, however, was better positioned to share his findings with the scientific community. His letters describing the experiment traveled through the networks of correspondence that connected natural philosophers across Europe. His vivid description of the shock made a lasting impression on his colleagues. He wrote that he would not take a second shock for the entire Kingdom of France, such was the intensity of the experience. This dramatic testimony captured the imagination of experimenters everywhere. The device became known as the Leyden jar, named after the city where Musschenbroek taught, and its fame spread rapidly through the scientific circles of Europe. Here at last was a way to store electrical charge, to hold on to that mysterious force and examine it at leisure. The Leyden jar consisted of a glass vessel coated inside and outside with metal foil or containing water, with a conducting rod extending through an insulating stopper into the interior. When connected to a source of electricity, the jar accumulated charge, with the glass acting as an insulator between the inner and outer conducting layers. The storage capacity of the Leyden jar opened new possibilities for electrical experimentation. Natural philosophers could now charge their jars and transport them to different locations, demonstrating electrical phenomena to audiences who had no access to the cumbersome friction machines. They could connect multiple jars together to create batteries of Leyden jars that stored even greater amounts of charge. They could conduct experiments that required sustained electrical power rather than momentary sparks. Public demonstrations of electrical phenomena became fashionable entertainment across Europe. Itinerant lecturers traveled from town to town with their Leyden jars and friction machines, performing spectacular experiments for paying audiences. In one famous demonstration, a charge from a Leyden jar was sent through a chain of soldiers holding hands, causing them all to jump simultaneously as the shock passed through their bodies. In another theatrical display, experimenters used the stored charge to ignite alcohol or to create bright sparks that leaped through the air. These public spectacles, while often presented as mere entertainment, served an important purpose in spreading knowledge of electrical phenomena beyond the confines of universities and royal societies. Craftsmen, merchants, and curious citizens witnessed demonstrations that revealed electricity as a real and powerful force rather than mere philosophical speculation. The Leyden jar made electricity tangible and accessible in ways that earlier experiments never could. The scientific community recognized that the Leyden jar represented more than just a clever device for storing charge. It revealed something fundamental about the nature of electricity itself. The fact that charge could be accumulated and held suggested that electricity was not simply an instantaneous phenomenon but something that could exist in a kind of static state, waiting to be released. This insight would prove crucial for developing theoretical understanding in the years to come. The invention also raised new questions. What was actually happening inside the glass jar? How did the glass itself contribute to the storage of charge? Why did the inner and outer surfaces need to be present for the device to work? Natural philosophers debated these questions in their correspondence and publications, each proposing theories based on the limited understanding of electricity available to them. As winter nights grew longer and the year 1746 drew to a close, the Leyden jar had established itself as an indispensable tool for anyone seriously studying electricity. The limitation that had frustrated earlier experimenters had been overcome. Now, with the ability to store and control electrical charge, natural philosophers could conduct systematic investigations that would soon reveal even deeper mysteries about this remarkable force of nature. The stage was set for discoveries that would connect the lightning in the heavens to the sparks produced in laboratories, uniting celestial and terrestrial electricity in ways that would soon capture the imagination of a colonial printer and inventor working across the Atlantic Ocean. The Leyden jar had opened doors, but it remained a curiosity confined to the laboratories of natural philosophers and the parlors of wealthy enthusiasts. In the middle of the 18th century, electricity still dwelt in the realm of spectacle rather than understanding. That would change through the work of a most unlikely investigator, a man who came to the study of electricity not through formal training in natural philosophy, but through the practical curiosity that characterized the best minds of the age. Benjamin Franklin was already in his 40s when he turned serious attention to electrical phenomena. A printer by trade, a writer by talent, and a civic organizer by temperament, he had made his fortune and secured his reputation through Poor Richard's Almanac and various publishing ventures in Philadelphia. By the late 1740s, he had earned sufficient wealth to step back from daily business operations and devote himself to public service and intellectual pursuits. Among these pursuits, electricity captured his imagination with particular intensity. Franklin received a glass tube for generating static electricity as a gift from Peter Collinson, a correspondent in London, around 1747. The device was similar to those being demonstrated across Europe, capable of producing sparks and small shocks that delighted audiences. But where others saw entertainment, Franklin saw patterns waiting to be understood. He began experimenting with methodical thoroughness, documenting his observations in letters to Collinson that would eventually be compiled and published, spreading his ideas across the Atlantic world. One of Franklin's earliest insights concerned the nature of electrical charge itself. Previous experimenters had spoken of electricity as though it were a fluid, or perhaps two fluids, that could be transferred between objects. Franklin proposed something more elegant. He suggested that electricity was a single element, present in all matter, and that objects became electrified not by gaining some foreign substance but by having more or less than their normal share of this electrical element. An object with excess he termed positively charged, and one with a deficit he called negatively charged. This terminology, positive and negative, would endure to the present day, though Franklin had no way of knowing he had assigned the labels backward by modern convention. Nevertheless, his conceptual framework proved remarkably useful. Franklin's experiments took place in an era when electrical investigation remained deeply social. He worked not in isolation but with a circle of friends and fellow enthusiasts in Philadelphia. Together they tested theories, constructed apparatus, and shared discoveries. In these collaborative sessions, Franklin developed his understanding of how charge could be conserved, transferred, and concentrated. He demonstrated that the total electrical charge in a system remained constant, merely redistributed between objects. This principle of conservation would become fundamental to electrical theory. But Franklin's thoughts reached beyond laboratory demonstrations. He observed that pointed metal objects seemed particularly effective at drawing off electrical charge. Church steeples and other tall, pointed structures were frequently struck by lightning during storms. Could these phenomena be related? The sparks generated in electrical experiments resembled miniature lightning bolts. Both produced light, both made crackling sounds, both could ignite flammable materials. Franklin began to suspect that lightning itself was electrical in nature, a massive discharge between the clouds and the earth below. In 1750, Franklin proposed an experiment to test this hypothesis. He suggested erecting a tall metal rod on a hilltop or high building during a thunderstorm to see if it could draw electrical charge from storm clouds. The proposal was published in his correspondence and circulated among European natural philosophers. In France, in May of 1752, Thomas François Dalibard successfully performed the experiment using an iron rod 40 feet tall, confirming that storm clouds were indeed electrified. Franklin himself, apparently unaware that his experiment had already succeeded in France, performed his own test later that same year in a manner that would become legendary, though the details remain somewhat uncertain. The account we have suggests he flew a kite during a thunderstorm, the kite constructed with a metal wire extending from its top. At the base of the kite string, where he stood beneath shelter, he attached a metal key. As the storm approached and the string became dampened by rain, making it more conductive, Franklin observed that loose threads on the string stood erect, repelled by electrical charge, just as threads would behave near a charged glass tube in the laboratory. When he brought his knuckle near the key, he drew a spark, demonstrating conclusively that the clouds above were charged with electricity. The experiment was dangerous, more so than Franklin perhaps fully appreciated. Others who attempted similar investigations were killed by lightning strikes. Franklin survived, whether through caution, good fortune, or by keeping properly sheltered while the dampened string conducted charge down from the kite. Regardless of the precise circumstances, his demonstration proved the electrical nature of lightning and opened new possibilities for understanding atmospheric phenomena. More importantly, Franklin's insight led to practical invention. If lightning was electrical, and if pointed metal objects could draw off electrical charge, then perhaps tall metal rods could protect buildings by providing a path for lightning to safely discharge into the ground. Franklin developed and promoted the lightning rod, a simple pointed metal conductor installed at the highest point of a structure and connected by wire to a metal stake driven deep into the earth. When lightning struck, the rod would channel the tremendous current harmlessly into the ground rather than allowing it to shatter masonry, splinter wood, or ignite fires. The lightning rod represented one of the first practical applications of electrical science, a device born from systematic investigation and theoretical understanding rather than accident or craft tradition. Buildings across Philadelphia began sporting these protective rods, and the practice spread. Franklin refused to patent his invention, believing that useful knowledge should be freely shared for the benefit of all. His generous spirit matched his scientific acumen. Franklin's electrical investigations earned him international recognition. The Royal Society of London awarded him the Copley Medal in 1753. Universities granted him honorary degrees. A man who had never attended college, who had learned through reading and doing rather than formal instruction, had nevertheless made contributions to natural philosophy that commanded respect from the most learned institutions of Europe. As the 1750s drew toward a close, Franklin's attention increasingly turned toward political affairs, first in Pennsylvania and later in the mounting tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain. His electrical researches became less frequent, though he maintained correspondence with natural philosophers throughout his life. He had established fundamental concepts, demonstrated the electrical nature of lightning, and created a practical device that protected lives and property. His legacy in electricity was secure. The study of electricity now possessed clearer language, better conceptual frameworks, and demonstrated connections between laboratory phenomena and the awesome forces of nature. The mysterious sparks and shocks were beginning to yield their secrets, revealing patterns that careful minds could discern and describe. Other investigators would build upon these foundations, carrying electrical science toward new revelations about the nature of matter and life itself. The scientific world of the late 18th century was abuzz with the revelations about electricity that had emerged from systematic experimentation. Electrical phenomena were no longer mere parlor tricks or mysterious natural occurrences. Scientists across Europe were probing deeper, seeking to understand not just how electricity behaved in wires and jars, but whether this invisible force might have something to do with the very essence of life itself. In the Italian city of Bologna, a physician and natural philosopher named Luigi Galvani was conducting experiments that would ignite one of the most fascinating controversies in the history of science. Galvani, born in 1737, had spent much of his career studying anatomy at the University of Bologna, where he held the position of professor. His interests bridged the worlds of medicine and natural philosophy, and like many educated men of his time, he maintained a laboratory where he could pursue experimental investigations. The story of Galvani's most famous discovery has been told in various ways over the years, but the essential facts paint a picture of serendipity meeting careful observation. During the 1780s, Galvani was conducting experiments involving static electricity and animal tissue. In his laboratory, he had been dissecting frogs, preparing their legs for anatomical study. On one particular occasion, perhaps in 1780 or 1781, something extraordinary happened. When a dissected frog leg was touched by a metal scalpel while a nearby electrical machine was generating sparks, the muscles in the dead frog's leg suddenly contracted, as if the creature were trying to jump. This unexpected twitching captured Galvani's complete attention. Here was a dead animal, its muscles responding as though alive, triggered by some interaction with electricity. He began conducting systematic experiments to understand what was happening. He touched frog legs with different metals, created various electrical conditions, and carefully documented what he observed. The phenomenon was repeatable. The legs would twitch and contract when the right conditions were present. Galvani's experiments took an even more intriguing turn when he discovered that the frog legs didn't always need a nearby electrical machine to produce the effect. Sometimes, simply touching the nerve and muscle with two different metals would cause the contraction. He hung brass hooks through the spinal cords of frogs and suspended them from iron railings in his garden. When the legs touched the iron, they twitched. Even without any obvious external source of electricity, the phenomenon occurred. To Galvani, these observations pointed toward a revolutionary conclusion. Perhaps animals possessed their own inherent electricity, what he began to call animal electricity. The notion was not entirely without precedent. People had long wondered about the nature of nerve impulses and muscle movement. What caused a thought in the brain to translate into motion in a limb? Galvani proposed that electricity was the answer, that living creatures generated and stored electrical fluid in their tissues, particularly in nerves and muscles. The metals merely provided a way to discharge this biological electricity, causing the muscles to contract. He published his findings in 1791 in a treatise titled De Viribus Electricitatis in Motor Musculari Commentarius, or Commentary on the Effect of Electricity on Muscular Motion. The publication created immediate excitement across the scientific community. Galvani's experiments were dramatic and seemingly accessible. Researchers throughout Europe began repeating his procedures, obtaining frog legs and metals, watching dead tissue spring into apparent life. The implications seemed profound and somewhat unsettling. If animals possessed their own electricity, what did this mean for the understanding of life itself? Was the difference between living and dead simply a matter of electrical charge? Could electricity be the long-sought vital force that animated matter? The questions rippled through both scientific circles and popular imagination. Galvani's careful drawings showed the experimental setup in precise detail. His anatomical training served him well, as he meticulously identified which parts of the frog's nervous system needed to be intact for the phenomenon to occur. He demonstrated that the effect required a connection between nerve and muscle, suggesting that electricity somehow flowed through the nervous tissue to activate the muscle fibers. The gentle philosopher had opened a door into understanding the electrical nature of biological systems, though the full picture would take much longer to emerge. His experiments with frog legs represented more than a curious phenomenon. They suggested that electricity was not merely a property of amber, glass, and Leyden jars, but something intimately connected with living processes. Not everyone accepted Galvani's interpretation, however. His conclusions about animal electricity would soon face challenge from another Italian natural philosopher, setting the stage for a debate that would ultimately lead to one of the most important inventions in the history of electrical science. But for now, in the laboratories and lecture halls of Europe, researchers watched in fascination as frog legs danced to the touch of metal, as if the boundary between life and death had become strangely permeable. Galvani continued his experiments until his death in 1798, refining his techniques and defending his theory. He remained convinced that he had discovered something fundamental about the nature of life itself. Though his interpretation would prove incomplete, his observations were genuine and reproducible. Something electrical was indeed happening in those frog legs, and the phenomenon would eventually help illuminate the true nature of how nerves and muscles function. The gentle physician from Bologna had touched upon one of biology's deepest secrets, even if the full explanation would require additional insights and corrections from those who would follow in his footsteps. As the 18th century drew to a close and gave way to a new era, the scientific world found itself captivated by a peculiar controversy. Luigi Galvani's experiments with frog legs had set learned minds ablaze with questions about the nature of electricity itself. Was it truly a vital force coursing through living tissue, as Galvani believed? Or was something else at work in those twitching specimens? The answer would come from an unlikely source, a professor of experimental physics at the University of Pavia whose meticulous investigations would transform our understanding of electrical phenomena forever. Alessandro Volta, born in Como in 1745, had spent much of his career studying the properties of gases and static electricity. He was a methodical man, patient in his observations, careful in his conclusions. When news of Galvani's experiments reached him, Volta felt both fascination and skepticism. He recognized the importance of what Galvani had discovered, but his scientific instinct suggested a different interpretation of those mysterious contractions. Through careful experimentation, Volta began to form a theory that would challenge everything Galvani believed. He noticed that the frog's muscles contracted most vigorously when two different metals touched both the muscle and each other. This observation led him down a path of investigation that would occupy him for years. Perhaps, Volta reasoned, the electricity did not originate in the animal tissue itself. Perhaps instead it arose from the contact between dissimilar metals, with the moist tissue of the frog merely detecting this electrical current. To test his hypothesis, Volta conducted countless experiments, replacing the frog tissue with cloth moistened in salt water. The results proved illuminating. He could detect electrical effects without any animal tissue whatsoever, simply by bringing different metals into contact with a conducting solution. This discovery suggested that Galvani's animal electricity was not truly animal in origin at all. The frog had been not the source of electricity, but rather an exquisitely sensitive detector of currents produced by metallic contact. The debate between Galvani and Volta unfolded over several years, carried out through scientific papers and letters. It was conducted with the courtesy that characterized the best of scientific discourse in that age, even as the two men held fundamentally opposing views. Galvani continued to believe in a vital electrical fluid inherent to living things. Volta pressed his case for metallic electricity, accumulating evidence through systematic experimentation. In 1799, Volta made a breakthrough that would settle the controversy and change the world. If different metals in contact with moisture could produce electrical effects, he wondered, what would happen if he stacked many such combinations together? The result was an invention that would bear several names in its early years: the voltaic pile, the courant de tasses, the electrochemical battery. Whatever one called it, this device represented something entirely new in the history of electrical science. The voltaic pile consisted of alternating discs of zinc and copper, separated by cardboard soaked in salt water or dilute acid. When Volta stacked these elements atop one another and connected the top and bottom with a wire, something remarkable occurred. Unlike the brief spark of a Leyden jar or the momentary discharge of static electricity, this device produced a continuous flow of electrical current. For the first time in human history, electricity could be sustained, controlled, and made to flow as steadily as water through a pipe. Volta announced his invention in a letter to Sir Joseph Banks, President of the Royal Society in London, in March of 1800. The letter, written in French, described his apparatus in careful detail. The scientific community responded with immediate excitement. Here was a tool that could produce electricity on demand, without the laborious turning of generators or the accumulation of static charges. Researchers across Europe began constructing their own voltaic piles, experimenting with different metals and solutions to enhance the electrical output. The implications of Volta's invention extended far beyond the resolution of his dispute with Galvani. The voltaic pile opened entirely new avenues of investigation. Scientists could now conduct experiments that required sustained electrical current rather than brief discharges. They could study how electricity flowed through different substances, how it affected chemical compounds, and how it might be harnessed for practical purposes. Napoleon Bonaparte himself took an interest in Volta's work, inviting the scientist to Paris in 1801 to demonstrate his pile before the French National Institute. The exhibition proved a triumph. Napoleon was so impressed that he awarded Volta a gold medal and made him a count. The French emperor, ever alert to potential military and industrial applications, recognized that this new source of electricity might hold strategic importance for France. The voltaic pile also demonstrated something profound about the nature of electricity itself. By showing that chemical processes between metals and solutions could produce electrical current, Volta had revealed an intimate connection between chemistry and electricity. This insight would lead, in the decades to come, to the discovery that electrical currents could drive chemical reactions, just as chemical reactions could produce electrical currents. The field of electrochemistry was born from Volta's invention. Scientists soon discovered that the voltaic pile could decompose water into hydrogen and oxygen gases, separate metallic elements from their compounds, and produce effects that seemed almost miraculous to observers. The steady current from Volta's invention made it possible to conduct systematic studies that had been impossible with earlier electrical apparatus. Each new pile built, each variation in materials and construction, added to the growing understanding of how electricity behaved. The battery, as Volta's invention came to be known, represented more than just a clever arrangement of metals and moisture. It embodied a principle that would echo through the centuries, that electricity could be stored chemically and released on demand. From the massive battery banks that would later power telegraph systems to the tiny cells in modern electronic devices, all trace their lineage back to those first voltaic piles assembled in Volta's laboratory. As word of the invention spread through scientific circles and beyond, experimenters began to explore the limits of what the voltaic pile could do. They built larger piles with more disks, seeking stronger currents. They tried different combinations of metals. They tested various solutions between the disks. Each variation taught them something new about the mysterious force that flowed through their apparatus. The 18th century had ended with questions about the nature of electricity in living things. The 19th century began with a device that could produce electricity through entirely non-living means, opening doors to discoveries that would transform human civilization in ways neither Galvani nor Volta could have imagined when they first puzzled over those twitching frog legs. The voltaic pile had opened a door that could never be closed. By the early decades of the 19th century, laboratories across Europe hummed with the quiet industry of electrical experimentation. Scientists could now produce steady, continuous currents of electricity, and with this new tool came questions that previous generations could never have imagined asking. The relationship between electricity and magnetism, two phenomena that had seemed entirely separate for all of human history, was about to be revealed in ways that would reshape our understanding of nature itself. In Copenhagen, on a spring evening in April of 1820, a Danish professor named Hans Christian Oersted was preparing a lecture demonstration for his students. Oersted had long harbored a conviction, almost philosophical in nature, that the forces of nature must be connected somehow. He had been influenced by the Romantic natural philosophy popular in Germany, which suggested that electricity, magnetism, heat, and light were not isolated phenomena but different manifestations of a unified whole. Most of his colleagues considered such ideas poetic but unscientific. Tonight, however, Oersted would stumble upon proof that would silence the skeptics. The demonstration was meant to show the heating effect of electric current. Oersted connected a voltaic pile to a platinum wire, which glowed as the current passed through it. Near the wire, quite by chance, lay a magnetic compass. As the current flowed through the wire, something remarkable happened. The compass needle, which had been pointing steadily north as it had done since time immemorial, suddenly swung perpendicular to the wire. When Oersted reversed the direction of the current, the needle swung the opposite way. The room must have fallen silent. Here was something entirely unexpected. An electric current, flowing through a wire, was somehow creating a magnetic effect. The two forces were not separate at all. They were intimately connected in a way that no one had previously demonstrated with such clarity. Oersted tested the phenomenon repeatedly, moving the compass to different positions around the wire, varying the strength of the current, and each time the result was consistent. Electricity in motion produced magnetism. Oersted spent the next 3 months carefully documenting his discovery. In July of that year, he published his findings in a 4-page paper written in Latin, the international language of science, which he sent to scientific societies and prominent researchers throughout Europe. The paper spread with remarkable speed, and its impact was immediate. Within weeks, scientists in Paris, London, and across the continent were replicating his experiment and exploring its implications. In Paris, news of Oersted's discovery reached the Academy of Sciences in September. Among those who heard the report with intense interest was André-Marie Ampere, a mild-mannered mathematician and physicist whose life had been marked by both brilliance and tragedy. Ampere had taught himself mathematics as a boy, reading voraciously despite limited formal education. He had suffered personal losses that might have broken a lesser spirit, but he found solace in the clarity and certainty of mathematical reasoning. Ampere immediately grasped the significance of Oersted's discovery and set to work with extraordinary focus. Within just a few weeks, he had not only replicated Oersted's observations but had extended them in profound ways. He demonstrated that two wires carrying electric current would exert forces on each other. If the currents flowed in the same direction, the wires attracted each other. If the currents flowed in opposite directions, they repelled. Here was a new kind of force, distinct from the static electrical attraction and repulsion that had been known since ancient times. This was a force between moving charges, between currents of electricity. Ampere worked with a speed and precision that astonished his contemporaries. He presented a series of papers to the Academy of Sciences throughout the autumn of 1820, each one building on the last. He devised ingenious experiments, constructing coils of wire and observing how they behaved like magnets when current flowed through them. He showed that a coil of current-carrying wire would orient itself north-south, just as a compass needle does, and proposed that perhaps magnetism itself was caused by tiny loops of electrical current within magnetic materials. But Ampere's greatest contribution was not experimental. It was mathematical. He set out to describe the forces between currents with the same mathematical rigor that Newton had brought to gravity and that Coulomb had brought to static electric charges. By 1825, Ampere had developed a complete mathematical theory of what he called electrodynamics, the science of moving electricity and its magnetic effects. His equations could predict precisely how strong the force would be between any arrangement of current-carrying wires. It was a triumph of mathematical physics, transforming Oersted's chance observation into a comprehensive theory. The implications rippled outward through the scientific community like waves across a still pond. Electromagnetism, as this unified phenomenon came to be called, was not merely an interesting curiosity. It was fundamental to nature itself. The compass needle that had guided sailors for centuries was responding to electrical currents, perhaps within the Earth, perhaps elsewhere. The aurora borealis shimmering in northern skies might be electrical in origin. The relationship between lightning and magnetism suddenly demanded investigation. Other researchers joined the exploration. François Arago in Paris showed that a copper disc could be magnetized by passing current through a nearby coil. Johann Schweiger developed the galvanometer, a device using electromagnetic principles to measure tiny electric currents with unprecedented sensitivity. Each discovery built upon the others, each experiment suggested new questions, new possibilities. The unification of electricity and magnetism represented something deeper than a mere practical advance. It suggested that nature's diversity might conceal an underlying simplicity, that forces which appeared separate and distinct might be different aspects of the same fundamental reality. This idea would echo through the centuries that followed, inspiring physicists to search for ever deeper unifications. But in 1820, in those first exciting months after Oersted's compass needle swung aside, the immediate implications were wonder enough. As the 1820s progressed, the tools and understanding born from electromagnetism would enable a quieter revolution in another laboratory, where a self-educated English bookbinder's apprentice was beginning experiments that would transform these theoretical insights into practical devices that would reshape civilization. The connection between electricity and magnetism had been revealed, but the full potential of that connection was only beginning to be glimpsed. The discoveries of Oersted and Ampere had opened a door between electricity and magnetism, showing that electric current could produce magnetic effects. But in the autumn of 1831, in the basement laboratory of the Royal Institution in London, a self-taught bookbinder's apprentice turned natural philosopher was about to discover the reverse, that magnetism could produce electricity. His name was Michael Faraday, and his insights would provide the foundation for nearly all the electrical technology that would follow. Faraday had come to science through an unusual path. Born in 1791 to a poor family in Newington Butts, south of London, he had received only the most basic education before being apprenticed to a bookbinder at the age of 14. But the books he bound became his teachers. He read voraciously, particularly works on science, and attended public lectures whenever he could. When he was 21, a customer gave him tickets to hear the great chemist Humphrey Davy lecture at the Royal Institution. Faraday took careful notes, bound them beautifully, and sent them to Davy asking for employment. When Davy's assistant was dismissed for fighting, Faraday got the position. By 1831, Faraday had already made significant contributions to chemistry and had begun his systematic investigations into electricity and magnetism. He was driven by a profound intuition that all the forces of nature were somehow connected, convertible from one to another. If electricity could produce magnetism, he reasoned, then magnetism should be able to produce electricity. Many had tried this experiment before without success. They had placed wires near magnets and detected nothing. But Faraday suspected that something more was needed, not just the presence of a magnetic field, but something about change. On August 29, 1831, Faraday wound two separate coils of wire around opposite sides of an iron ring, each coil insulated from the other and from the ring itself. He connected one coil to a battery and the other to a galvanometer, a sensitive device for detecting electric current. His reasoning was elegant. Perhaps the iron ring would concentrate and transfer magnetic influence from one coil to the other, just as Ampere's work suggested it might. When he closed the switch connecting the first coil to the battery, he watched the galvanometer needle attached to the second coil. It jumped, flickered, and then returned to rest. When he opened the switch, disconnecting the battery, the needle jumped again, in the opposite direction, then settled back to zero. This brief deflection might have seemed like a failure. After all, the needle hadn't stayed deflected as long as the current flowed in the first coil. But Faraday's careful observation revealed something profound. Electricity was induced in the second coil not by the steady presence of magnetic field, but by its change. The sudden appearance of the magnetic field when the current started, and its sudden disappearance when the current stopped, these changes created a momentary electrical current in the nearby coil. He had discovered electromagnetic induction. Over the following months, Faraday explored this phenomenon with methodical thoroughness. He found that moving a magnet into or out of a coil of wire induced a current in that wire. He discovered that moving a wire near a stationary magnet had the same effect. The key was always relative motion, always change. A copper disc rotated between the poles of a magnet produced a continuous electrical current. This became the first electrical generator, the ancestor of all the dynamos and alternators that would eventually light cities and power industries. What made Faraday's work particularly remarkable was not just the experimental discoveries but the way he thought about them. Lacking formal mathematical training, he developed a different kind of understanding, one based on visual imagination and physical intuition. He conceived of space around magnets and electrical charges as being filled with lines of force, invisible threads of influence that could be visualized by the patterns iron filings made around a magnet. Where others saw mysterious action at a distance, Faraday envisioned a medium filled with stress and strain, with fields of force that could push and pull on electrical charges and magnetic materials. These field lines, as he imagined them, had direction and concentration. They emerged from one magnetic pole and curved through space to enter the other. They never crossed, and their density indicated the strength of the magnetic influence. When a conductor cut through these lines of force, when the lines moved relative to the conductor, an electromotive force was induced that drove current through the wire. This concept of fields would eventually revolutionize physics, though that transformation would require the mathematical genius of James Clerk Maxwell to fully realize. Faraday's discovery of induction had immediate practical implications. If moving a magnet near a coil could generate electricity, then mechanical motion could be converted into electrical current. Conversely, his discovery that current-carrying conductors experienced forces in magnetic fields meant that electricity could produce mechanical motion. In 1821, he had already demonstrated a primitive electric motor, a wire carrying current that rotated continuously around a magnet. Now, with induction, he had shown the principle of the generator. The cycle was complete: electricity to motion, motion to electricity. Throughout the 1830s, Faraday continued his electrical researches, investigating the nature of electrical conduction in different materials, studying electrolysis, the decomposition of chemical compounds by electrical current, and formulating precise mathematical laws about how much chemical change occurred for a given quantity of electrical charge. His laws of electrolysis suggested something profound about the atomic nature of matter and electricity, hinting that electrical charge itself might come in discrete units associated with atoms. These insights would bear fruit decades later when the electron was finally discovered. Despite his growing fame and the practical importance of his discoveries, Faraday remained remarkably humble. He declined a knighthood and twice refused the presidency of the Royal Society, preferring to remain simply Mr. Faraday. He lived modestly and continued his experimental work with undiminished curiosity even as his health began to fail in later years. His deep religious faith as a member of the Sandemanian Church gave him a sense of humility before nature and a conviction that understanding the natural world was a form of understanding divine creation. As night settles around us and we contemplate Faraday's achievements in that basement laboratory, we can recognize the moment when electricity truly began its transformation from curious phenomenon to practical power. The principles Faraday discovered, that changing magnetic fields create electric currents, that electric currents create magnetic fields, that motion and electricity could be interconverted, these would become the foundation of the electrical age. Every generator spinning in every power plant, every electric motor turning in every device, operates on the principles Michael Faraday discovered with his coils and magnets and iron rings. As Michael Faraday's experimental discoveries illuminated the practical pathways by which electricity could flow and transform, another challenge remained for those who sought to harness this invisible force. Understanding what electricity could do was one thing, but predicting exactly how it would behave in different circumstances required a different kind of mind altogether. The experimentalists had opened doors, but now mathematicians would need to map the territories that lay beyond. In a modest schoolroom in Bavaria during the early 1820s, a mathematics teacher named George Simon Ohm worked quietly on a problem that had frustrated many before him. Ohm came from a family of locksmiths, and perhaps this practical heritage gave him an appreciation for the mechanics of how things worked. He had studied mathematics at the University of Erlangen, but found himself teaching in relative obscurity, far from the great scientific centers of his time. Yet distance from fame did not diminish his curiosity about the fundamental nature of electrical flow. Ohm had access to the voltaic piles that were now becoming more widely available, and he began conducting careful experiments with wires of different materials and lengths. He measured, adjusted, and measured again, seeking patterns in how electrical current moved through conductors. The work was painstaking and demanded precision that challenged the instruments of the era. Early attempts yielded inconsistent results that might have discouraged a less persistent investigator. The breakthrough came when Ohm gained access to better equipment, particularly more stable sources of electrical current. With these improved tools, he discovered something remarkable in its simplicity. The current flowing through a conductor was directly proportional to the voltage applied across it and inversely proportional to the resistance of the conductor itself. This relationship, expressed as a straightforward mathematical equation, revealed a fundamental law governing electrical circuits. In 1827, Ohm published his findings in a work titled The Galvanic Circuit Investigated Mathematically. The reception was not what he might have hoped. Many experimentalists of the time found his mathematical approach too abstract, preferring the tangible reality of laboratory demonstrations. Some colleagues even criticized his work, and the lack of recognition left Ohm disappointed and professionally stalled for years. Yet the truth of his discovery could not remain hidden forever. Gradually, other scientists recognized the profound utility of what came to be known as Ohm's law, and the teacher from Bavaria received the recognition he deserved, though it arrived later than it should have. The equation Ohm discovered gave engineers and scientists a predictive tool of immense value. No longer did they need to rely solely on trial and error when designing electrical circuits. They could calculate in advance how much current would flow, how much resistance was needed, and what voltage would be required for any particular application. This mathematical foundation transformed electricity from an experimental curiosity into something that could be engineered with confidence and precision. As Ohm's insights gradually gained acceptance, another brilliant mind was advancing the mathematical understanding of electrical behavior. Gustav Kirchhoff, working in Germany several decades after Ohm, turned his attention to more complex circuits where multiple paths for current existed. In the late 1840s, while still remarkably young, Kirchhoff formulated two principles that extended Ohm's work into networks of conductors. Kirchhoff's first law addressed the junction points in circuits where wires met and current could divide along different paths. He recognized that electrical charge was conserved, that the total current flowing into a junction must equal the total current flowing out. Nothing was lost or created at these meeting points. This principle of continuity brought a satisfying logical order to circuit analyses. His second law concerned the closed loops that formed within circuits. Kirchhoff showed that around any closed loop, the sum of all voltage rises must equal the sum of all voltage drops. This principle reflected the conservation of energy as it applied to electrical systems. Together, these two laws provided a complete framework for analyzing even highly complex networks of conductors, resistances, and voltage sources. The beauty of Kirchhoff's laws lay not merely in their accuracy but in their universality. They applied to simple circuits and elaborate ones alike, giving engineers the tools to design telegraph networks, power distribution systems, and eventually the intricate electronic circuits that would emerge in later centuries. Mathematics had become the language through which electricity's behavior could be described, predicted, and controlled. These circuit laws represented something profound in the story of electricity's domestication. The ancient Greeks had rubbed amber and wondered at the sparks. Natural philosophers had speculated about invisible fluids and mysterious forces. Experimentalists like Faraday had discovered fundamental principles through brilliant hands-on investigation. Now mathematicians had woven these discoveries into elegant equations that captured the essence of electrical behavior in symbols and relationships that anyone properly trained could understand and apply. In laboratories and workshops across Europe and America, the practical implications of this mathematical understanding became increasingly apparent. Engineers designing new telegraph systems could calculate precisely what wire thickness they needed for different distances. Those experimenting with electric motors could predict how changes in voltage or resistance would affect performance. The guesswork was giving way to calculation, and with calculation came the confidence to attempt ever more ambitious applications. The work of Ohm and Kirchhoff represented a quieter kind of revolution than some of the more dramatic experimental discoveries that preceded and followed them. There were no spectacular sparks, no surprising phenomena witnessed for the first time. Instead, there was the subtle but powerful transformation of electricity from something observed and manipulated into something truly understood in a mathematical sense. This understanding formed an essential foundation, an invisible architecture upon which the entire edifice of electrical engineering would be constructed. As the 1850s approached, the stage was set for electricity to move beyond the laboratory and demonstration hall into practical application on a scale that would begin to transform society itself. The principles were understood, the laws were established, and the mathematical tools were available. What came next would carry electricity out of the realm of natural philosophy and into the networks of commerce, communication, and daily life. The mysterious force that had fascinated humanity since ancient times was about to become a servant of civilization, carrying messages across continents in ways that would reshape human connection and understanding forever. As the mathematical laws governing electrical circuits became clearer through the work of Ohm and Kirchhoff, a remarkable transformation began to unfold. Scientists and inventors now possessed not just curiosity about electricity, but the practical tools and understanding needed to put it to work. The stage was set for one of the most significant technological revolutions in human history, the ability to send messages across vast distances at the speed of lightning itself. The idea of rapid communication at a distance had tantalized inventors for decades. Before electricity, messages traveled only as fast as horses could gallop or ships could sail. A letter from London to New York might take weeks. News of battles, business transactions, and family emergencies all moved at this agonizingly slow pace. But with the discoveries of electromagnetism and the voltaic battery providing steady current, a new possibility emerged. Perhaps electrical signals could carry information along wires faster than any human messenger. In the 1830s, multiple inventors across Europe and America began experimenting with electrical telegraphs. In England, Charles Wheatstone and William Fothergill Cooke developed a system using multiple wires and needles that pointed to letters on a display board. Their approach was elegant, requiring operators to simply watch which way the needles moved to spell out words. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic Ocean, a very different mind was wrestling with the same problem. Samuel Morse was not a scientist by training. He had established himself as a portrait painter, someone who made his living capturing faces on canvas rather than studying electrical phenomena in laboratories. But during a sea voyage back from Europe in 1832, Morse engaged in conversation about recent electrical discoveries. Something sparked in his imagination. If electrical signals could travel along wires, surely they could be made to carry messages. By the time his ship docked, Morse had become obsessed with this vision. The system Morse eventually developed, with crucial assistance from Alfred Vail and Joseph Henry, took a different approach from the English inventors. Rather than multiple wires and moving needles, Morse's telegraph used a single wire and relied on a simple pattern of short and long electrical pulses. These pulses, which came to be known as dots and dashes, could represent letters and numbers. An operator would tap out messages on a key that made and broke the electrical circuit, while at the receiving end, an electromagnet would activate, marking the pattern on a moving strip of paper or producing audible clicks that trained operators learned to decode by ear. The brilliance of Morse code lay in its simplicity. The most common letters in English, like E and T, received the shortest codes, a single dot and a single dash respectively, making transmission faster. Less common letters required longer combinations. This elegant efficiency would serve the world for over a century. On May 24, 1844, Morse sent his famous demonstration message from the Supreme Court chamber in Washington to his assistant in Baltimore, some 40 miles away. The message he chose carried both hope and humility. "What hath God wrought?" Those 4 words, transmitted as electrical pulses along copper wire, heralded a new era. For the first time in human history, information had moved faster than any physical messenger could carry it. The telegraph spread with astonishing speed. Within just a few years, wires began stretching across the American continent, connecting cities and towns in a web of communication. Telegraph offices became vital centers of commerce and news. Stock prices, weather reports, and political developments that once took days or weeks to traverse the country now arrived in minutes. Businesses could coordinate operations across vast distances. Newspapers could report breaking news from far away. The very rhythm of commerce and society began to accelerate. But the most audacious dream remained: could telegraph cables cross the ocean itself? The Atlantic Ocean presented challenges that seemed almost insurmountable. The water was thousands of feet deep in places. The distance was vast. Salt water could damage insulation. The cable would need to be immensely long, perfectly insulated, and strong enough to survive being laid from a ship in all weather conditions. Cyrus Westfield, an American businessman, became captivated by this vision in the 1850s. He assembled financial backing, consulted with the best engineers, and commissioned the manufacture of unprecedented lengths of specially designed cable. The first attempt in 1857 failed when the cable snapped partway across. The second attempt in 1858 succeeded in connecting Newfoundland to Ireland, and for a few glorious weeks, messages passed between continents. Queen Victoria and President Buchanan exchanged greetings. The world marveled. But then the cable failed, damaged perhaps by excessive voltage applied by overeager operators trying to boost weak signals. Field refused to give up. After years of setbacks, including the disruption of the American Civil War, another attempt was mounted in 1865 using the massive steamship Great Eastern, the largest vessel afloat. This cable too broke during laying. Finally, in 1866, success. A new cable reached across the Atlantic and remained functional. The Great Eastern even managed to recover the 1865 cable, repair it, and complete that connection as well. Suddenly, 2 telegraph lines spanned the ocean. The impact on international relations, business, and journalism proved profound. Diplomatic negotiations that once required months of sailing back and forth could now occur in days. Financial markets in London and New York became interconnected. News of events in Europe reached America almost immediately, and vice versa. The world began to feel smaller, more connected, more immediate. Telegraph networks continued to expand across every continent. Lines crossed deserts, mountains, and plains. Cables snaked across the floors of oceans. By the end of the 19th century, a vast nervous system of copper wire encircled the globe, carrying millions of messages in the form of electrical pulses. The technology that began with careful experiments in understanding voltage and resistance had become the infrastructure of modern communication. The telegraph operators who worked these systems developed their own culture and expertise. Skilled at decoding the clicks and pulses of Morse code, they became the essential human interface between electrical signals and meaningful information. Many were women, finding employment opportunities in this new technical field. The rhythmic clicking of telegraph keys became a distinctive sound of the modern age, a mechanical heartbeat carrying humanity's words at the speed of electricity. As our story moves forward, this foundation of electrical communication would soon inspire even more remarkable innovations, as scientists began to wonder whether Maxwell's predicted electromagnetic waves might carry messages through empty space itself, without any wires at all. The telegraph cables now stretched beneath oceans and across continents, carrying pulses of electricity that transmitted human thought at speeds previously unimaginable. Yet even as this practical revolution transformed commerce and communication, a deeper mystery remained unsolved. What, fundamentally, was electricity? How did it propagate through space? And what connection existed between electricity, magnetism, and light itself? In a quiet study in Scotland during the 1860s, a young professor named James Clerk Maxwell contemplated these questions with a mathematical mind of extraordinary power. He had grown up in the rolling countryside of Galloway, where his curiosity about the natural world had blossomed early. As a child, he had amazed his family by asking incessant questions about the workings of everything he encountered. Now, in his early 30s, Maxwell turned that penetrating curiosity toward the accumulated experimental knowledge of electricity and magnetism. Michael Faraday's concept of lines of force had captured Maxwell's imagination. The older experimentalist, working in his laboratory at the Royal Institution in London, had described invisible fields that filled space around magnets and electrical charges. But Faraday, for all his genius, lacked the mathematical training to express his insights in precise equations. Maxwell saw his task clearly: to take Faraday's intuitive understanding and translate it into the language of mathematics. The challenge was formidable. Electricity and magnetism had been studied separately for decades, and while Oersted and Faraday had revealed connections between them, no one had yet created a unified mathematical framework. Maxwell began by gathering all the known laws: Coulomb's law for electrical forces, Ampere's law for magnetic effects of currents, Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. He studied these relationships, searching for the underlying patterns. Working with pen and paper, Maxwell developed a set of equations that described how electric and magnetic fields behaved and influenced each other. He envisioned space as permeated by these fields, which could oscillate and propagate like waves through a medium. The mathematics was elegant but complex, involving partial differential equations that described how changes in one field produced changes in the other. As Maxwell manipulated his equations, something remarkable emerged. When he combined his expressions for electric and magnetic fields, the mathematics suggested that these fields could propagate together through empty space as waves. Even more astonishing, when he calculated the speed at which these electromagnetic waves would travel, he arrived at a number very close to the measured speed of light. The implication was stunning: light itself was an electromagnetic wave. The warm glow of a candle, the radiance of the sun, the rainbow spectrum, all were oscillations of electric and magnetic fields, traveling through space as intimately connected partners. Maxwell had unified three seemingly separate phenomena: electricity, magnetism, and light were all aspects of a single electromagnetic reality. Maxwell published his theory in a series of papers during the 1860s, culminating in his comprehensive treatise on electricity and magnetism in 1873. The work presented four fundamental equations, now known as Maxwell's equations, that completely described all electromagnetic phenomena. These equations possessed a beauty and completeness that marked them as among the greatest achievements of theoretical physics. Yet the immediate reception of Maxwell's theory was mixed. The mathematics was difficult, accessible only to those with advanced training. Many physicists found the abstract field concept hard to grasp, preferring more mechanical models. Even William Thomson, later Lord Kelvin, one of the era's most respected physicists, initially struggled to accept Maxwell's approach. The theory seemed too mathematical, too removed from physical intuition. Maxwell himself remained modest about his achievement. He continued teaching at Cambridge University, where he also oversaw the establishment of the Cavendish Laboratory, which would become one of the world's great centers of physics research. He had a gentle manner and a playful sense of humor, often composing witty verses about scientific subjects. His colleagues appreciated both his brilliance and his kindness. The full significance of Maxwell's equations would take time to reveal itself. Hidden within those mathematical expressions were predictions that would transform the world. The equation suggested that electromagnetic waves could exist at many different frequencies, not just those corresponding to visible light. There should be waves with much longer wavelengths and lower frequencies than light, and others with shorter wavelengths and higher frequencies. The entire electromagnetic spectrum lay waiting to be discovered and explored. Maxwell's work also revealed something profound about the nature of light speed. The velocity appeared as a constant in his equations, determined by fundamental properties of electricity and magnetism. This suggested that the speed of light was not arbitrary but was woven into the very fabric of electromagnetic reality. This insight would later prove crucial to Einstein's theory of relativity, but in Maxwell's time, its full implications remained hidden. Tragically, Maxwell did not live to see his theory fully vindicated. He died in 1879 at the age of only 48, the same age at which his mother had died. Abdominal cancer took him swiftly, cutting short one of the most brilliant scientific careers in history. On his deathbed, he remained characteristically thoughtful, telling a friend that his main concern was not death itself but leaving his wife alone. In the years immediately following Maxwell's death, his electromagnetic theory existed primarily as an elegant mathematical structure appreciated by a small circle of theoretical physicists. The real test would come from experiment. Could anyone actually generate and detect the electromagnetic waves that Maxwell's equations predicted? Could his abstract mathematics be transformed into physical reality? The answer would come from a laboratory in Germany, where a meticulous experimenter would bring Maxwell's invisible waves into the realm of the tangible. But that discovery still lay in the future. For now, Maxwell's equation stood as a monument to the power of mathematical thought, a demonstration that nature's deepest secrets could be revealed not just through hands-on experimentation but through the careful application of logical reasoning and symbolic manipulation. As the world moved into the 1880s, practical electrical technology continued its rapid advance. Edison would soon illuminate city streets with electric light, and power systems would begin spreading through urban centers. Yet beneath these visible transformations, Maxwell's equations silently contained the seeds of even greater revolutions to come: radio, television, radar, and all the wireless technologies that would define the modern age. As Maxwell's elegant equation settled into the consciousness of the scientific world, revealing the deep unity between electricity, magnetism, and light itself, a different kind of genius turned his attention to more practical matters. While theorists contemplated electromagnetic waves propagating through space, Thomas Edison focused on a problem that had frustrated inventors for decades, creating artificial light that ordinary people could afford to use in their homes. The idea of electric lighting was not new by the late 1870s. Arc lamps, which produced brilliant illumination by sparking electricity between carbon electrodes, already lit some city streets and public spaces. But these devices were harsh, blindingly bright, and far too intense for domestic use. They hissed and sputtered, requiring constant attention and adjustment. What households needed was something gentler, more controllable, something that could replace the gas lamps and candles that had illuminated human evenings for centuries. Edison understood that creating a practical electric light bulb was only part of the challenge. He envisioned something far more ambitious, an entire system that could generate electricity, distribute it through underground cables, measure consumption, and deliver power to thousands of individual lamps simultaneously. It was a vision that required not just invention but orchestration of dozens of interconnected technologies, each dependent on the others. In his laboratory at Menlo Park, New Jersey, Edison and his team embarked on one of history's most systematic quests for innovation. The principle of incandescent lighting was simple enough: pass electrical current through a material, causing it to heat up and glow. The difficulty lay in finding a filament that would burn brightly without burning out too quickly. Air caused the heated materials to oxidize and disintegrate almost instantly, so the filament needed to be sealed in a glass bulb from which the air had been removed. The search for the right filament material became an epic of patient experimentation. Edison's team tested thousands of substances, carbon derived from cotton thread, fishing line, coconut hair, even bamboo from Japan. Each material was carefully prepared, installed in an experimental bulb, and tested to see how long it would last. Some glowed for mere minutes before failing. Others showed more promise, burning for hours or even days. Legend tells of Edison's persistence through countless failures, and while the stories may be embellished, they capture something true about his approach. He saw each unsuccessful experiment not as defeat but as valuable information, narrowing the possibilities until the right solution emerged. By late 1879, he had developed a carbonized bamboo filament that could burn for over 1,200 hours, a lifespan that made commercial lighting feasible. But Edison knew that even the best light bulb was useless without a system to power it. He needed generators to produce electricity, cables to distribute it, meters to measure it, and a business model that would make it economically viable. He studied gas lighting companies carefully, understanding that he needed to match not just their illumination but their convenience and cost structure. The generator posed its own challenges. Drawing on Faraday's principles of electromagnetic induction, Edison designed large dynamos that could convert mechanical energy into electrical current with unprecedented efficiency. These massive machines, driven by steam engines, represented significant improvements over earlier generators, producing more power with less waste heat. For distribution, Edison chose direct current, which flowed steadily in one direction like water through a pipe. He designed a system of copper conductors, carefully calculating the wire thickness needed to carry current to distant locations without excessive energy loss. Understanding Ohm's law, he knew that resistance increased with distance, so his system worked best when generators were located close to the customers they served. On September 4, 1882, Edison threw the switch at his Pearl Street generating station in Lower Manhattan. Current flowed through underground cables to illuminate 400 lamps in the offices of J.P. Morgan and the New York Times, among other locations. The age of electric lighting had begun, not with a dramatic public demonstration but with the quiet, steady glow of incandescent bulbs bringing light to the growing darkness of evening. The Pearl Street station represented far more than a technical achievement. It was the prototype for an entirely new kind of infrastructure, one that would reshape cities and transform daily life. Edison had created not just a product but a complete system, generation, distribution, metering, and consumption all working together seamlessly. His parallel circuit design meant that each lamp operated independently. If one failed, the others continued burning, unlike series circuits where one failure darkened everything. The business model was equally innovative. Edison sold light, not equipment. Customers paid for the electricity they used, measured by meters Edison had designed, just as they paid for gas. This approach made electric lighting accessible to customers who could not afford the substantial upfront cost of their own generating equipment. It was illumination as a service, delivered through wires instead of pipes. As word of the Pearl Street station spread, other cities took notice. Within a few years, Edison companies were installing electric lighting systems across America and Europe. The warm glow of incandescent bulbs began replacing the flickering flames of gas lamps, pushing back the darkness with steadier, cleaner light. Homes, offices, factories, and streets gradually transformed as electricity became available. Yet even as Edison's direct current systems expanded, questions lingered about their limitations. Direct current could not efficiently travel more than a mile or two from its generating station without requiring prohibitively thick copper cables. This meant that cities needed multiple power stations, each serving a small district. Some engineers wondered whether there might be a better way to distribute electrical power across longer distances, a question that would soon spark one of technology's most famous competitions. For now, though, Edison's achievement stood unchallenged. He had taken the abstract principles of electrical science, refined through decades of careful research, and transformed them into something tangible and useful. The mysterious force that had sparked from rubbed amber in ancient Greece, that had streaked across thunderclouds and puzzled natural philosophers, that had been captured, measured, and described in mathematical equations, now flowed quietly through copper wires to illuminate the night, as reliable as sunrise and as available as the flick of a switch. As Edison's direct current system began illuminating cities across America, a brilliant young inventor was working in obscurity, his mind filled with visions of a different electrical future. Nikola Tesla had arrived in New York in 1884 with little more than a letter of introduction to Edison himself, but the ideas he carried would transform the world's relationship with electricity in ways that would echo through generations. Tesla's journey to this moment had been extraordinary. Born in 1856 in what is now Croatia, he possessed an unusual mind that could visualize machines in perfect detail, rotating them mentally to examine every angle before ever putting pencil to paper. While studying physics and mathematics in Austria, he had become fascinated with alternating current, a form of electricity that reversed direction many times per second, unlike the steady one-way flow of direct current that Edison championed. The vision had come to him in a flash while walking through a park in Budapest at sunset, reciting poetry. Suddenly, he saw it completely, a rotating magnetic field that could spin an electric motor without the troublesome commutators and brushes that direct current motors required. He drew diagrams in the dirt with a stick, his companion watching in bewilderment as Tesla explained how alternating currents in separate coils could create a magnetic field that spun by itself, pulling a rotor along with it. When Tesla briefly worked for Edison, the two men's differences became apparent almost immediately. Edison was practical and empirical, testing thousands of materials through trial and error. Tesla was theoretical and intuitive, working out solutions in his mind before building them. Edison offered Tesla a substantial sum to improve his direct current generators, but when Tesla succeeded, Edison dismissed the promised payment as a joke the young immigrant had failed to understand. Tesla resigned and spent a difficult period digging ditches for a living, his engineering education seemingly worthless. But fortune turned when Tesla found investors willing to back his alternating current system. In 1887, he established his own laboratory and began filing patents for polyphase alternating current motors, generators, and transformers. His system had an elegant beauty. Alternating current could be easily transformed to higher voltages for transmission, reducing losses over long distances, then step down again for safe use in homes and factories. This advantage would prove crucial, for direct current systems faced a fundamental limitation. Edison's power stations could only serve customers within about a mile, as the copper conductors lost too much energy over greater distances at the low voltages direct current required. To power a growing city, Edison needed power stations every few blocks, an expensive and inefficient arrangement. George Westinghouse, the successful inventor and industrialist who had revolutionized railroad braking systems, immediately grasped the potential of Tesla's system. In 1888, Westinghouse licensed Tesla's patents and committed his considerable resources to developing alternating current for commercial use. The stage was set for what newspapers would sensationalize as the Battle of the Currents. Edison responded to this threat with a campaign that seems remarkably harsh in retrospect. He began a public relations effort to portray alternating current as dangerously deadly, commissioning demonstrations where animals were electrocuted with AC to prove its lethal nature. Edison's associates even promoted the use of AC for a new form of execution, the electric chair, hoping the association would frighten the public away from the technology. The word Westinghouse was proposed as a term for electrocution. Yet the technical advantages of alternating current could not be overcome by fear. Westinghouse and Tesla continued refining their system, and the pivotal moment came with the bidding for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Westinghouse underbid Edison significantly and won the contract to illuminate the fair with alternating current. When the exposition opened, visitors gazed in wonder at hundreds of thousands of electric lights powered by Tesla's polyphase system, fed from generators at the fairground. The White City, as it was called, demonstrated that AC could be both safe and spectacular. An even more decisive victory came shortly after, when Westinghouse secured the contract to harness Niagara Falls for electrical generation. This massive project, completed in 1896, used Tesla's polyphase system to transmit power 26 miles to Buffalo, New York. Nothing like it had ever been attempted. The success of Niagara Falls proved beyond doubt that alternating current could deliver enormous amounts of power across significant distances, something Edison's system simply could not match. Tesla himself was driven by visions far beyond this commercial competition. He imagined a world where electrical power flowed wirelessly through the air or Earth itself, where energy could be transmitted to any point on the globe without wires. He experimented with high-frequency currents and built enormous coils that generated spectacular electrical discharges, creating artificial lightning bolts in his laboratory. His demonstrations left audiences breathless, though many of his more ambitious dreams would remain unrealized in his lifetime. By the turn of the century, alternating current had clearly prevailed. Edison's own company merged with Thomson-Houston Electric Company to form General Electric, which began adopting AC technology. The battle had been won not through marketing or fear, but through the inherent advantages of a system better suited to the needs of an electrifying world. The infrastructure Tesla and Westinghouse pioneered remains the foundation of modern power distribution. The transformers that step voltage up and down, the polyphase motors that drive industry, the long-distance transmission lines carrying power from distant generating stations, all stem from those inventions conceived by a young engineer who could see rotating magnetic fields in his imagination. The frequency of 60 cycles per second chosen in America, 50 in much of the rest of the world, still hums through power lines today, a legacy of decisions made more than a century ago. As the 19th century drew to a close, electricity was no longer a curiosity or a luxury for the wealthy. It was becoming the invisible foundation of modern civilization, flowing through growing networks of wire, ready to illuminate, to power, to connect. And even as this practical revolution unfolded, scientists were probing deeper into electricity's mysteries, seeking to understand the very waves that Maxwell had predicted and that would soon open yet another chapter in humanity's relationship with this remarkable force. The battle of currents had consumed the imagination of engineers and industrialists throughout the 1880s, But while practical men argued over how to distribute electricity through cities and across landscapes, a quiet theorist in Germany was preparing to unlock something far more profound. The equations that James Clerk Maxwell had written 2 decades earlier contained a prediction that seemed almost magical. If electricity and magnetism were truly unified as his mathematics suggested, then disturbances in electromagnetic fields should ripple outward through space itself, traveling at the speed of light. These waves would require no wires, no conductors, no physical medium beyond the mysterious ether that scientists of the era believed filled all of space. Yet for all the elegance of Maxwell's mathematics, no one had actually created these waves in a laboratory, detected them, or proven they existed at all. Heinrich Hertz had not set out to revolutionize communications or technology. Born in Hamburg in 1857, he was drawn to physics by pure curiosity about nature's fundamental workings. After studying under Hermann von Helmholtz in Berlin, Hertz took a position at the Karlsruhe Polytechnic, where he had access to a modest but well-equipped laboratory. There, in the mid-1880s, he began to consider Maxwell's theoretical predictions with the eyes of an experimentalist. If electromagnetic waves existed, they should be producible by rapidly oscillating electrical charges. The challenge was creating oscillations fast enough and detecting waves that would be invisible, intangible, utterly unlike the steady currents that Edison and Tesla were marshalling to light cities. Hertz's experimental apparatus was deceptively simple, a testament to his deep understanding of electrical principles. For his transmitter, he used an induction coil connected to a spark gap, 2 metal spheres separated by a small air gap. When voltage built up sufficiently, a spark would leap across the gap, creating a rapid oscillation of electrical current as charge surged back and forth. This oscillating current, if Maxwell was correct, should radiate electromagnetic waves outward into the surrounding space. The elegant simplicity of using a spark to create rapid oscillations demonstrated Hertz's intuitive grasp of electrical behavior. Each spark represented not a single discharge but a complex dance of electrons oscillating at frequencies far higher than anything achievable with mechanical generators. The detector Hertz devised was equally ingenious. He constructed a simple loop of wire with a tiny gap between its ends. If electromagnetic waves passed through this loop, they should induce an oscillating current, which might be visible as tiny sparks jumping across the gap in the receiving loop. The entire detection system required no power source, no batteries, no connection to the transmitter whatsoever. It would respond purely to electromagnetic disturbances traveling through space. This independence was crucial. Any connection between transmitter and receiver would leave open the possibility that electricity was traveling through wires or through the ground rather than through space itself. In 1887, in his laboratory at Karlsruhe, Hertz observed the phenomenon he had been seeking. When sparks jumped across the gap in his transmitter, tiny sparks appeared in his receiver loop several meters away. No wires connected the two devices. The effect persisted even when he placed non-conducting materials between transmitter and receiver. Something invisible was traveling through space, carrying electromagnetic influence from one apparatus to the other. With characteristic thoroughness, Hertz then embarked on a systematic investigation of these mysterious waves, determining their properties with careful experimentation. By placing his receiver at various distances and orientations, Hertz mapped the waves' behavior. He discovered that metal sheets reflected the waves, just as mirrors reflect light. By positioning a metal reflector behind his transmitter, he created standing waves, patterns of electromagnetic oscillation frozen in space where waves traveling forward interfered with waves reflecting backward. Measuring the distance between nodes in these standing waves, and knowing the frequency of his oscillating spark, Hertz calculated the velocity of electromagnetic waves. The result matched the speed of light exactly, just as Maxwell's equations had predicted. This was no coincidence. Light itself was an electromagnetic wave, oscillating at much higher frequencies than Hertz could produce with his spark apparatus, but fundamentally the same phenomenon. Hertz demonstrated that these waves could be refracted by passing through prisms made of pitch or asphalt, materials that bent their path just as glass bends light. He showed they could be polarized, forced to oscillate in particular orientations. Every property he tested confirmed Maxwell's theoretical predictions with stunning accuracy. The electromagnetic theory, which had seemed so abstract and mathematical, described physical reality with perfect precision. The unity of electricity, magnetism, and light was no longer theoretical speculation but demonstrated fact. The scientific community responded to Hertz's work with fascination and recognition of its profound implications. Here was experimental confirmation of one of the most ambitious theoretical frameworks in physics. Maxwell had not lived to see his predictions confirmed. He had died in 1879, too soon to witness Hertz's validation of his life's work. But the connection between their contributions was unmistakable. Maxwell's mathematical genius had predicted the waves, Hertz's experimental skill had revealed them to human senses. Together, their work represented the scientific method at its finest, theory making predictions, experiment testing them, and nature responding with clear answers. What Hertz himself did not initially emphasize were the practical applications of his discovery. When asked about the usefulness of electromagnetic waves, he reportedly suggested they had none, that they were simply a scientific curiosity that confirmed theoretical predictions. This assessment would prove spectacularly short-sighted, though perhaps understandable for a man focused on fundamental physics rather than engineering applications. Within less than a decade, inventors and entrepreneurs would transform Hertz's laboratory curiosity into wireless telegraphy. Within 2 decades, radio communication would span oceans. Within a century, electromagnetic waves would carry television, radar, satellite signals, and the vast torrents of data that connect our modern world. But in the quiet laboratory at Karlsruhe in 1887, these future developments remained invisible. What existed was something purer, a moment when human understanding of nature had leaped forward, when invisible forces yielded their secrets to careful reasoning and clever experimentation. The waves that Hertz generated and detected, oscillating perhaps millions of times per second, represented frequencies far beyond anything biological senses could perceive. Yet through the intermediary of scientific instruments and logical interpretation, these hidden aspects of reality became knowable, measurable, and understood. The story of electricity had begun with amber rubbed against cloth, with lightning flashing across ancient skies, with simple attractions and repulsions that seemed like minor curiosities of nature. Now that story had expanded to encompass waves traveling at the ultimate cosmic speed limit, unifying phenomena that seemed completely distinct, revealing an underlying electromagnetic nature to light itself. The force that Benjamin Franklin had coaxed from thunderclouds and that Volta had marshaled into steady current now revealed itself as something even more fundamental, a field pervading all space, capable of rippling with disturbances that carried energy and information without needing any material medium to sustain them. As the 19th century moved toward its close, electricity's story was far from finished. The electron itself still awaited discovery, and the true nature of electrical current remained mysterious. But with Hertz's confirmation of electromagnetic waves, a crucial piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, and the path forward toward our electromagnetic age became clear. The confirmation of electromagnetic waves had opened a new frontier in understanding how electricity propagated through space, but a deeper mystery remained. What was electricity itself? What actually flowed through wires when a current passed? What invisible substance carried the charge that scientists had been measuring, storing, and manipulating for over a century? As the 19th century drew to a close, researchers turned their attention to understanding the fundamental nature of electrical phenomena at the smallest imaginable scales. In laboratories across Europe, experimenters had been working with curious glass tubes from which most of the air had been pumped away. When electrical current was applied to metal plates sealed at either end of these evacuated tubes, mysterious rays seemed to emanate from the negative electrode, which scientists called the cathode. These cathode rays, as they became known, traveled through the near vacuum inside the tubes and caused the glass itself to glow with an eerie greenish light. Some researchers believed these rays were a form of electromagnetic wave, similar to light. Others suspected they might be streams of charged particles, but no one knew for certain. At the Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge, England, a young physicist named Joseph John Thomson had become fascinated by these enigmatic rays. Thomson, who preferred to be called JJ, had a remarkable ability to design elegant experiments that could tease out nature's secrets. In the spring of 1897, he constructed a series of carefully crafted cathode ray tubes, each designed to test a specific property of the mysterious rays. Thomson's approach was methodical and patient, the kind of work that unfolded in quiet laboratory rooms where the only sounds were the gentle hum of equipment and the scratch of pen on paper. He began by confirming that cathode rays could be deflected by magnetic fields, a property that had been observed before. But his crucial innovation was to improve the vacuum inside his tubes far beyond what previous experimenters had achieved. This better vacuum allowed him to demonstrate something that had eluded others: the rays could also be deflected by electric fields. On calm afternoons in Cambridge, Thomson watched the luminous beam inside his tubes bend and curve as he applied electrical charges to metal plates positioned around the ray's path. The ray always bent away from the negatively charged plate and toward the positive one, suggesting that whatever made up these rays carried a negative electrical charge. But Thomson went further. By carefully measuring exactly how much the rays deflected under known magnetic and electric forces, he could calculate the ratio of the particle's charge to its mass. The results were astonishing. Whatever particles made up these cathode rays were nearly 2,000 times lighter than hydrogen, the lightest known atom. Thomson repeated his experiments with different cathode materials, aluminum, iron, platinum, and different gases inside the tubes. Every time, he obtained the same result. The particles were universal, fundamental constituents of matter itself, not dependent on what metal the cathode was made from or what residual gas remained in the tube. Thomson proposed that these tiny particles, which he initially called corpuscles, were actually the fundamental carriers of electrical charge. They were pieces of atoms, smaller than any atom, that could be stripped away from matter. When these particles flowed through a wire, that flow was what we experienced as electric current. When they accumulated on a surface, that accumulation was what we measured as electric charge. The Irish physicist George Johnston Stoney had previously suggested the name electron for the fundamental unit of electricity, and this term gradually became attached to Thomson's discovered particles. The implications rippled outward through the scientific community like waves from a stone dropped in a still pond. For the first time, electricity had a concrete physical reality at the atomic scale. It wasn't a fluid or a force field in the abstract, but actual particles that could be measured, counted, and manipulated. The electron became the bridge between the macroscopic world of circuits and generators and the microscopic realm of atoms and molecules. Thomson's discovery also fundamentally altered humanity's understanding of atomic structure. Atoms, long thought to be indivisible, must actually contain these much smaller electrons. This raised fascinating questions. How were electrons arranged within atoms? What held them in place? What was the rest of the atom made of if electrons could be separated from it? The atom, it turned out, had an architecture waiting to be explored. In the years following Thomson's breakthrough, other researchers built upon his foundation. The precise charge of a single electron was measured through ingenious experiments with tiny oil droplets suspended in electric fields. Scientists discovered that electrical charge always came in multiples of this fundamental electron charge. You could have 1 electron's worth of charge, or 2, or 1,000,000, but never 1.5. Charge was quantized, existing only in discrete packets rather than continuous amounts. This understanding of electrons transformed the interpretation of all previous electrical discoveries. When Galvani's frog legs had twitched, it was electrons flowing through the nerves. When Volta's pile produced current, it was electrons being pushed through the circuit by chemical reactions. When Faraday rotated his wire in a magnetic field, it was electrons being set in motion by electromagnetic induction. The electron was the protagonist in every electrical phenomenon that humanity had ever observed, though it had performed its role unseen until Thomson's careful experiments revealed its presence. The practical implications began to emerge gradually but persistently. Understanding electrons enabled scientists to comprehend how materials conducted electricity at a fundamental level. Metals, they realized, contained electrons that could move relatively freely from atom to atom, making them good conductors. Insulators held their electrons more tightly bound to individual atoms. This knowledge would eventually enable the development of entirely new materials engineered to have specific electrical properties, though that application lay years in the future. As laboratories throughout the world replicated and extended Thomson's work, the electron took its place as one of the fundamental building blocks of nature. It was a particle of almost negligible mass but profound importance, the carrier of negative charge, the current in every wire, the spark in every lightning bolt. From the amber that Thales of Miletus rubbed in ancient Greece to the power stations illuminating modern cities, every electrical phenomenon ultimately traced back to the behavior of these tiny, universal particles. The discovery that electricity had a tangible, particle nature completed a transformation in understanding that had begun with William Gilbert's careful observations 3 centuries earlier. What had once been mysterious forces and invisible fluids were now understood as streams of concrete, measurable particles obeying mathematical laws. The electron gave electricity a face, even if that face was far too small for any human eye to see directly. And with this understanding in place, the stage was set for technological revolutions that would reshape communication, computation, and civilization itself in the century to come. With the electron now identified as the fundamental carrier of electric charge, the final years of the 19th century stood at a remarkable threshold. Scientists understood that electricity consisted of moving particles, that it could generate electromagnetic waves, and that these waves propagated through space at the speed of light. Yet this knowledge remained largely confined to laboratories and lecture halls. The practical application of electromagnetic waves to transform human communication still awaited an inventor willing to bridge the gap between theoretical possibility and working technology. In Bologna, Italy, a young man named Guglielmo Marconi had been following the scientific discoveries with intense fascination. Born in 1874 to an Italian father and Irish mother, Marconi enjoyed the privilege of education and the freedom to pursue his interests in physics and electricity. When news of Heinrich Hertz's electromagnetic wave experiments reached him in the mid-1890s, Marconi recognized something that many purely academic scientists had overlooked: these invisible waves could carry information across distances without wires. The implications seemed almost magical. Telegraph systems had revolutionized communication, but they required extensive networks of copper wire strung across landscapes and buried under oceans. Marconi envisioned something far more liberating: messages transmitted through the air itself, requiring no physical connection between sender and receiver. Ships at sea could communicate with shore. Remote locations could receive news and weather warnings. The practical applications seemed boundless. Working in the attic of his family's estate at Villa Grifone, Marconi began experimenting with apparatus similar to what Hertz had used. He constructed a spark gap transmitter that generated electromagnetic waves when electricity jumped across a small air gap, creating rapid oscillations. For a receiver, he employed a coherer, a glass tube filled with metal filings that would suddenly conduct electricity when electromagnetic waves struck it, then return to their non-conducting state when tapped by a small hammer. This simple device could detect the presence of the invisible waves. Through the quiet months of 1895, Marconi gradually extended the range of his transmissions. First, he achieved communication across a single room, then across the attic space, then from one end of the house to another. He added a vertical wire as an antenna, grounding the other end to the earth, and found that this dramatically increased both transmission and reception distance. By autumn, he had succeeded in sending signals across the family estate, even when a hill blocked the direct line of sight between transmitter and receiver. The electromagnetic waves, unlike light, could diffract around obstacles. Excited by these successes, Marconi approached the Italian government with his invention, hoping for support and recognition. When Italian officials showed little interest in funding further development, Marconi made a bold decision. In early 1896, he traveled to London with his mother, carrying his apparatus and his ambitions to a nation whose vast empire and naval power made wireless communication particularly valuable. In Britain, Marconi found a more receptive audience. He filed patent applications, gave demonstrations, and attracted the attention of William Preece, the chief engineer of the British Post Office, who had himself been experimenting with wireless communication. Preece's endorsement proved invaluable, lending credibility to the young Italian inventor. Marconi's demonstrations grew increasingly ambitious, transmissions across the Bristol Channel, then across the English Channel to France. With each success, the potential of wireless telegraphy became more apparent. The technology progressed with remarkable speed. Marconi established the Wireless Telegraph and Signal Company in 1897, later renamed Marconi's Wireless Telegraph Company. He worked tirelessly to improve every aspect of his system: more powerful transmitters, more sensitive receivers, better antenna designs, and more efficient methods of tuning transmitters and receivers to the same frequency to avoid interference. The early systems had been crude, essentially broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously. Tuned circuits allowed multiple wireless stations to operate without disrupting each other. Ships soon emerged as the most enthusiastic adopters of the new technology. For centuries, vessels at sea had been isolated, unable to call for help in emergencies or receive warnings about weather conditions and navigational hazards. Wireless telegraphy changed this fundamental isolation. By 1899, ships equipped with Marconi apparatus could communicate with shore stations and with each other across dozens of miles of open water. The British Royal Navy and commercial shipping companies began installing wireless equipment, recognizing its strategic and safety value. Yet skeptics remained, particularly regarding Marconi's boldest claim, that wireless signals could span the Atlantic Ocean. Many experts argued that electromagnetic waves, like light, traveled in straight lines. The curvature of the Earth would therefore block transmissions over distances greater than the horizon. Marconi remained convinced otherwise, believing that the waves would somehow follow the Earth's surface or be reflected by the upper atmosphere. In December 1901, Marconi staged his most audacious experiment. He established a powerful transmitter at Poldhu in Cornwall, England, equipped with a circular antenna array. He then traveled to Signal Hill in St. John's, Newfoundland, where he prepared receiving equipment with an antenna suspended from a kite flown high above the rocky cliff. On December 12th, despite howling winds and challenging conditions, Marconi and his assistants listened through primitive receivers for the agreed-upon signal, 3 dots, the letter S in Morse code, being transmitted from across the Atlantic. And they heard it. Faint, intermittent, barely distinguishable from atmospheric static, but present. 3 dots, repeated at intervals. Electromagnetic waves had crossed more than 2,000 miles of ocean, somehow propagating around the planet's curve. The scientific world received the news with both excitement and skepticism, with some questioning whether Marconi had truly heard the signal or had been deceived by atmospheric noise. Yet subsequent experiments confirmed the reality of long-distance wireless transmission. The explanation for how these waves crossed the Atlantic would come later, with the discovery of the ionosphere, layers of electrically charged particles in the upper atmosphere that reflect certain radio frequencies back to Earth, allowing signals to bounce between the ground and sky, effectively hopscotching around the planet's curvature. But even without understanding the mechanism, wireless operators could exploit the phenomenon. The years following Marconi's transatlantic success saw wireless technology spread rapidly around the globe. Coastal stations multiplied. Ships installed increasingly sophisticated equipment. Wireless operators became essential crew members, maintaining constant watch for distress signals and important communications. The technology proved its value dramatically in maritime disasters, most famously in 1912 when the sinking Titanic's wireless operators transmitted distress calls that brought rescue ships and saved hundreds of lives. Beyond point-to-point communication, inventors soon recognized that wireless transmission could carry more than simple dots and dashes. If electromagnetic waves could be modulated, varied in strength or frequency, they could carry voice and music. Radio broadcasting emerged, transforming wireless from a communication tool for ships and military forces into a medium for entertainment, news, and culture that would reshape the 20th century. As night settles quietly around us now, we can reflect on how electromagnetic waves continue their invisible journey through the air, carrying voices, music, and information in patterns that would have seemed like pure magic to earlier generations. Marconi's spark gap transmitters evolved into technologies that connect our modern world in ways the young experimenter in that Italian attic could scarcely have imagined, all built upon the invisible foundation of electromagnetic waves propagating through space at the speed of light. The wireless wonders of radio had begun to capture the imagination of the early 20th century, yet something even more fundamental was quietly transforming the landscape itself. While messages flew invisibly through the air, a different revolution was spreading across the ground, carried by copper wires strung on wooden poles that marched across fields and into towns that had known only darkness after sunset since the beginning of human time. The expansion of electrical power networks in the decades around the turn of the century represented one of humanity's most ambitious undertakings. What had begun with Edison's Pearl Street station illuminating a single square mile of lower Manhattan in 1882 would grow into interconnected systems spanning entire continents, bringing light and power to hundreds of millions of people who had never known such convenience. The story of this expansion is one of both engineering triumph and social transformation. In the 1890s, the great question of whether alternating or direct current would prevail had been largely settled in favor of Tesla's and Westinghouse AC systems, primarily because alternating current could be transformed to high voltages for efficient long-distance transmission. This single technical advantage made it possible to site power plants far from the cities they served, unlocking new possibilities for generation. Among the most dramatic of these possibilities was hydroelectric power. The completion of a generating station at Niagara Falls in 1895 demonstrated the immense potential of harnessing falling water to produce electricity. The falls had powered mills for decades through direct mechanical connections, but now turbines could convert that thundering energy into electrical current that traveled over wires to Buffalo, more than 20 miles away. It seemed almost miraculous that the ancient force of flowing water could be transformed into light in distant homes and power in factories that had no direct connection to the river itself. The Niagara project captured public imagination worldwide and sparked an era of dam construction. The natural geography of rivers and mountains began to be viewed through a new lens, as engineers identified locations where elevation changes could be exploited for power generation. In the decades that followed, ambitious projects would reshape waterways from the Tennessee Valley to the Columbia River, from the Swiss Alps to the rivers of Norway. Yet not all power came from falling water. Coal-fired steam plants, refined versions of the technology that had powered the Industrial Revolution, formed the backbone of urban electrical systems. These stations grew larger and more efficient, with towering smokestacks becoming familiar landmarks in industrial districts. The principle was straightforward: burning coal heated water to create steam that turned turbines connected to generators, but the scale was unprecedented. Single facilities could produce enough electricity to light entire cities. As generating capacity grew, so too did the networks to distribute it. The transmission towers that carried high voltage lines across long distances became a distinctive feature of the modern landscape. These steel lattices, marching in unwavering lines across hills and valleys, represented a new kind of infrastructure entirely. Unlike roads or railroads that required substantial earthworks, power lines could span terrain with remarkable efficiency, bringing energy to remote locations that would have been prohibitively expensive to reach by other means. The transformation was perhaps most profound in rural areas. In the early 20th century, farms and small towns remained largely untouched by electrical service. While city dwellers increasingly took electric lighting for granted, country families still relied on kerosene lamps, hauled water by hand, and preserved food in iceboxes. The disparity created a growing divide between urban and rural life. Rural electrification projects, which accelerated in the 1920s and 1930s in many countries, sought to bridge this gap. In the United States, the Rural Electrification Administration, established in 1935, provided loans and technical assistance to build power lines into the countryside. Similar initiatives emerged in other nations, driven by a mixture of social policy and recognition that electrified farms would be more productive. The arrival of electricity in rural communities brought changes that rippled through every aspect of daily life. Electric pumps meant running water could flow into farmhouse kitchens. Electric motors replaced exhausting manual labor in barns and workshops. Refrigeration transformed food storage and diet. Radio brought news and entertainment that had previously been available only to city dwellers. Perhaps most significantly, electric lighting extended productive hours beyond the limits of daylight and firelight, fundamentally altering the rhythm of human activity that had remained largely unchanged for millennia. The expansion of power grids required not only physical infrastructure but also new approaches to managing electrical systems. Unlike goods that could be stored in warehouses, electricity had to be generated at the precise moment it was needed. Engineers developed methods to predict demand patterns, learning that consumption rose in the morning as people woke, peaked in the evening as lights came on, and varied with seasons and weather. Power plants had to be coordinated to meet these fluctuating needs, with some facilities running constantly to provide base load while others could be brought online during periods of high demand. The interconnection of individual power systems into larger grids added both complexity and resilience. By linking networks together, utilities could share power across regions, drawing on hydroelectric facilities when water was plentiful, coal plants when it was not, and balancing loads across time zones. These interconnections required careful engineering to ensure that alternating current waves remained synchronized across vast distances, a technical challenge that pushed the boundaries of electrical engineering. The social implications of widespread electrification extended far beyond practical conveniences. The ability to banish darkness with the flip of a switch represented a form of control over the environment that previous generations could scarcely have imagined. Factories could operate around the clock. Cities became landscapes of light, their streets and buildings glowing against the night sky. The transformation was so rapid and so complete that within a single human lifetime, electric power shifted from a curiosity to an absolute necessity, woven so thoroughly into the fabric of modern life that its absence became unthinkable. By mid-century, the developed world was crisscrossed with transmission lines, dotted with generating stations, and utterly dependent on the continuous flow of electrical current through this vast network. The infrastructure represented an extraordinary feat of coordination and engineering, millions of miles of wire connecting countless generators to countless consumers in a system that had to balance supply and demand moment by moment. Yet even as these massive grids reached their maturity, delivering reliable power to homes and industries across entire nations, the next chapter in electricity's story was already beginning. The same fundamental force that illuminated cities would soon be harnessed in entirely new ways, manipulated at ever smaller scales to create technologies that would transform not just how we lived, but how we thought, communicated, and understood the world itself. As the 20th century unfolded and power lines stretched across continents, bringing light to cities and farms alike, a quieter revolution was taking shape in laboratories and workshops around the world. The challenge was no longer simply moving electricity from place to place, but controlling it with ever greater precision, making it respond to human intention in ways that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. The vacuum tube emerged as one of the first instruments to tame the electron. In 1904, John Ambrose Fleming, working in England, developed the thermionic valve, a glass bulb containing two electrodes sealed in a vacuum. When one electrode was heated, it released electrons that could flow to the other electrode, but only in one direction. This simple device could convert alternating current into direct current, rectifying the wave-like flow into a steady stream. Fleming's diode, as it came to be called, was elegant in its simplicity, yet it opened a door to a new realm of possibility. Just 2 years later, an American inventor named Lee de Forest added a third electrode to Fleming's design, creating what he called the Augean. This grid, placed between the heated cathode and the collecting plate, could control the flow of electrons passing through. A small voltage applied to the grid could regulate a much larger current, allowing the device to amplify signals. De Forest's triode vacuum tube became the foundation of electronic amplification, making possible everything from transcontinental telephone calls to radio broadcasting that could reach millions of listeners. The vacuum tube transformed communication and entertainment through the early decades of the 20th century. Radio receivers filled with glowing tubes brought music, news, and voices into homes across the world. Telephone networks expanded as vacuum tube amplifiers boosted signals across vast distances. In laboratories, researchers discovered they could use tubes to perform calculations, switching them on and off in patterns that represented numbers and logical operations. The first electronic computers, massive machines filling entire rooms, hummed with the heat of thousands of vacuum tubes working in concert. Yet the vacuum tube carried inherent limitations. Each tube required power to heat its cathode, generating warmth that needed dissipation. They were fragile, burning out after hundreds or thousands of hours of use. Large electronic systems required constant maintenance, with technicians replacing failed tubes as regularly as one might change light bulbs. The tubes were also relatively large, setting practical limits on how complex any electronic device could become. The answer to these limitations lay not in heated filaments and glowing glass, but in the properties of certain solid materials. Scientists had long known that some substances were neither good conductors like metals nor complete insulators like rubber. These semiconductors, including silicon and germanium, behaved in curious ways that seemed to depend on their purity and structure. In 1947, at Bell Telephone Laboratories in New Jersey, 3 physicists made a discovery that would reshape the world. John Bardeen, Walter Brattain, and William Shockley were investigating the properties of germanium crystals when they found they could create a device that amplified electrical signals without any vacuum, without any heated cathode, using only a tiny piece of solid semiconductor with 3 wire contacts. They called it the transistor, from transfer resistor, describing how it transferred an electrical signal across a resistive element. The first transistor was a delicate thing, a small triangle of gold contacts pressed against a crystal of germanium. It was crude compared to the refined vacuum tubes of the era, yet it worked. Within months, the team had refined their design, and Shockley developed the junction transistor, a more robust and practical version that sandwiched layers of differently treated semiconductor material together. The transistor required no warm-up time, consumed far less power than a vacuum tube, and could be made remarkably small. As manufacturing techniques improved through the 1950s, transistors became cheaper and more reliable. Portable radios, once heavy devices requiring large batteries to power their tubes, became pocket-sized companions. Hearing aids shrank from box-sized apparatus to devices that could fit behind the ear. Computers, no longer needing vast arrays of hot vacuum tubes, became faster and more dependable. But the true revolution came when engineers realized that multiple transistors could be fabricated on a single piece of semiconductor material. In 1958, Jack Kilby at Texas Instruments built the first integrated circuit, creating several components on one small slice of germanium. Almost simultaneously, Robert Noyce at Fairco developed a more practical method using silicon, creating a complete circuit with transistors, resistors, and other components all formed on a single chip. The integrated circuit, or microchip, fundamentally changed what was possible with electronics. Engineers could now pack dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of transistors onto a piece of silicon smaller than a fingernail. Each generation of chips doubled in complexity, following a pattern that became known as Moore's Law, named for Gordon Moore, who observed that the number of transistors on a chip seemed to double roughly every 2 years. As transistors shrank and proliferated, electronic devices became simultaneously more powerful and more compact. The computers that once required entire rooms could fit on a desktop, then in a briefcase, then in a pocket. Calculators that had been mechanical or tube-based became solid-state devices costing just a few dollars. Digital watches replaced intricate clockwork with circuits that kept perfect time using tiny oscillating crystals. The microprocessor, introduced by Intel in 1971, placed an entire computer's calculating unit on a single chip. This central processing unit could be programmed to perform countless different tasks, making it the versatile heart of everything from personal computers to industrial controllers. The ability to mass-produce these sophisticated circuits meant that powerful computing became affordable and ubiquitous. By the closing decades of the 20th century, integrated circuits had become so complex that a single chip might contain millions or even billions of transistors. These tiny electronic brains powered communication networks, guided vehicles, controlled appliances, and processed the vast flows of information that defined modern life. The electrons that had once merely lit bulbs and turned motors now carried intricate patterns of data, performing calculations and making decisions millions of times each second. The journey from vacuum tubes to integrated circuits had taken less than a human lifetime, yet it represented a transformation as profound as any in the long story of electricity. What had begun with amber and lodestones, progressed through batteries and generators, and illuminated the world with electric light had now become the foundation of an information age, where electricity's true power lay not just in its energy but in its ability to represent, process, and transmit the patterns we call knowledge. As the century drew to a close, those patterns flowed through silicon pathways finer than a human hair, carrying forward the ancient promise that understanding nature's forces might illuminate not just our homes, but our minds as well. As the 20th century progressed beyond the invention of transistors and integrated circuits, the story of electricity entered yet another chapter, one written not just in laboratories but across entire continents, in the design of power systems that would need to sustain billions of people while preserving the planet that had given humanity this mysterious force to harness in the first place. The middle decades of the century saw electrical generation take a dramatic turn with the harnessing of nuclear fission. In the 1950s, the first commercial nuclear power plants began converting the energy locked within atomic nuclei into heat, which boiled water, which spun turbines, which turned generators, Faraday's principle of electromagnetic induction operating at scales he could never have imagined. The peaceful atom, as it was called in those optimistic years, promised electricity too cheap to meter. Reactors multiplied across nations, each one a testament to humanity's growing confidence in manipulating the fundamental forces of nature. By the 1970s and 1980s, hundreds of these plants dotted the landscapes of industrialized countries, providing steady baseline power that required no coal, no oil, no burning of ancient forests compressed into carbon. Yet this technology brought its own complexities. The accidents at 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and later Fukushima reminded the world that electricity generated through nuclear fission demanded respect, careful engineering, and acknowledgement that some forces, once unleashed, required eternal vigilance. The question of what to do with radioactive waste, materials that would remain dangerous for millennia, remained unanswered even as the lights stayed on. Meanwhile, another source of electrical energy had been quietly developing since the 1950s. The photovoltaic effect, first observed by Alexandre Edmond Becquerel in 1839, had remained a curiosity for over a century. But when Bell Laboratories created the first practical silicon solar cell in 1954, achieving 6% efficiency in converting sunlight directly to electricity, a new possibility emerged. Early applications powered satellites in space, where sunlight was abundant and alternatives scarce. Through the following decades, researchers gradually improved these cells, finding better materials, refining manufacturing processes, and increasing efficiency percentage by percentage. For most of the 20th century, solar power remained expensive, a technology of the future that seemed forever just beyond economic viability. But the 21st century brought a dramatic transformation. Manufacturing innovations, particularly in China, drove costs down by factors of 10, then 20, then more. Panels that once cost hundreds of dollars per watt fell to mere dollars, then cents. By the 2010s, solar installations were spreading across rooftops and desert expanses, generating electricity with no moving parts, no fuel, nothing but photons striking semiconductor materials and liberating electrons to flow through circuits. The same quantum mechanics that had enabled transistors now powered entire cities. Wind, that ancient force that had turned grain-grinding mills for millennia, was also being captured with new sophistication. The turbines that began appearing across landscapes in the 1980s and 1990s grew larger with each generation. Blades lengthened to hundreds of feet, towers rose to heights that would have astonished the builders of medieval windmills. Sophisticated electronics adjusted blade pitch thousands of times per hour, optimizing the capture of each gust. Offshore wind farms, positioned in coastal waters where winds blew strong and steady, began feeding substantial power into grids. These turbines, like solar panels, generated electricity through electromagnetic induction, the same principle Faraday had demonstrated with his rotating copper disk nearly 2 centuries earlier. The diversification of electrical generation brought new challenges. Unlike coal or nuclear plants that could run continuously, solar panels produced nothing at night, and wind turbines stood still when air stilled. The modern grid required something its earlier designers had never needed to consider at such scale: storage. The challenge was storing electrical energy for hours or days, then releasing it when needed. Battery technology, which had evolved slowly since Volta's pile, suddenly accelerated. Lithium-ion cells, developed in the 1980s and 1990s primarily for portable electronics, were scaled up to utility proportions. Warehouses filled with battery banks began appearing at solar and wind installations, charging when generation exceeded demand, discharging when the situation reversed. Other storage approaches emerged, pumping water uphill to reservoirs when power was abundant, releasing it through hydroelectric turbines when needed, compressing air into underground caverns, even lifting massive weights that could later descend, turning generators as they fell. The grid itself was growing more intelligent. Where power systems had once been largely mechanical, responding to demand through automatic governors and simple controls, 21st century grids incorporated vast computational networks. Sensors monitored voltage, frequency, and power flow at millions of points. Software algorithms predicted demand patterns, weather effects, and optimal routing of electricity through interconnected networks spanning continents. The smart grid, as this evolved infrastructure became known, could detect failures within milliseconds, reroute power around damaged sections, and even communicate with individual appliances to optimize consumption during peak periods. Superconductivity, discovered by Heike Kamerlingh-Onnes in 1911 when he cooled mercury to near absolute zero and found its electrical resistance vanished entirely, promised transformative applications. For most of the 20th century, superconductors required such extreme cooling that practical applications remained limited. But discoveries of high-temperature superconductors in 1986, materials that lost all resistance at merely very cold rather than impossibly cold temperatures, opened new possibilities. Superconducting cables could transmit enormous currents without loss. Superconducting magnets could levitate trains or contain fusion reactions. Though still requiring significant cooling, these materials hinted at a future where electrical efficiency approached theoretical perfection. Research into wireless-powered transmission continued the dream Nikola Tesla had pursued at Wardenclyffe over a century ago. While beaming useful amounts of power across great distances remained impractical, short-range wireless charging became commonplace for small devices. Inductive charging pads used oscillating magnetic fields to transfer energy across air gaps. Electric vehicles began charging without cables, parking over embedded coils that coupled electromagnetically with receivers beneath the car. Some researchers explored longer-range transmission using focused microwave beams or lasers, approaches that worked in principle but faced efficiency and safety challenges. The story of electricity, as the 21st century progressed, became inseparable from questions of sustainability and climate. The same fossil fuels that had powered industrial civilization were changing the atmosphere. Electricity generation represented the largest source of these emissions. The transition toward cleaner sources became not merely technical but imperative, a challenge requiring everything humanity had learned about generating, storing, transmitting, and efficiently using this invisible force that had mystified ancient philosophers when they rubbed amber and attracted chaff. From those simple observations thousands of years ago, through centuries of careful experiment and brilliant insight, humanity had learned to command electricity with increasing sophistication. What had once seemed like magic was now understood through mathematics, harnessed through engineering, and woven into every aspect of modern existence. Yet mysteries remained. Researchers continued probing quantum behaviors of electrons, seeking room-temperature superconductors, developing fusion reactors that might provide abundant clean power, and imagining energy systems we can barely envision today. As you drift towards sleep, consider this remarkable journey. The same force that makes your hair stand up on dry days, that flashes across stormy skies, that once seemed utterly beyond human control, now flows reliably at your command, carrying information, light, and power through invisible networks spanning the globe. The story of electricity is the story of human curiosity transforming mystery into understanding, observation into mastery, and impossibility into everyday miracle. And like electricity itself, this story continues flowing forward, illuminating paths into futures yet to be discovered. As we bring to a close our journey through the story of electricity, from ancient amber to the power grids that illuminate our modern world, we hope these tales of discovery and wonder have gently carried you through the evening. Thank you for joining us on this peaceful exploration of the force that transformed civilization. If these calm adventures have brought you comfort, we'd love to have you with us again. Please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And now, as the night deepens and your mind settles, we wish you the sweetest of dreams. Good night, fellow dreamer, and may your sleep be restful and your dreams be kind.